friends. This is the Be Real Babe podcast, a place where your average babes come together to talk about life stresses, messes, and successes. A place where being yourself is the ultimate goal, where your opinion, your story, and your individual experience matters. Join me, your host B, and my guests for real and raw talks every week, laying it all out there so we can all help each other learn more, grow deeper, and evolve collectively. Now keep in mind, as a disclaimer, no one here is an expert and no one is giving any advice. This is strictly our opinions, thoughts, feelings, and for entertainment purposes only. Now with that being said, it's time. So grab your drink, grab your joint, and let's jump right in. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Be Real Babe podcast. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for stopping by the show today. I hope that you have a good time. And if you're a returning listener, watcher, supporter, thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart for coming back time and time again. For those that don't know me, my name is Brandy and I'm the host of the show. And today you guys are on episode 201, Being Real About Cancer with Torva and Donovan. Now you guys, first and foremost, this is an amazing episode, but I just had to say I am so sorry. I changed my settings. I tried to move things around. My internet has been absolutely awful, so I'm going to apologize right off the bat for my audio. I'm so sorry, you guys, but I did not want to reschedule on this amazing couple, and I did not want to not try and capture this, so I'm trying my best, and I promise, even though I keep saying, I will try and reach out and figure out what is going on, but just really appreciate you guys' patience as I deal with my internet and the lack of Riverside working for me right now. So again, really appreciate it. And this episode is so amazing. You guys, you already know Torva and you know Coach Donovan from past episodes. And today we get a little bit deeper into cancer, the diagnosis and the treatment there. With, of course, obviously slight shades to government because that's our favorite thing to do. But another beautiful episode with these two. I am just always in awe of them as a couple, as individuals. And I'm so honored that they come on my show all the time. And before I get to this amazing episode, fingers crossed all things worked, and again, apologize for the audio on my part. I just want to remind you that you can like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications if you are listening on YouTube, Rumble, Apple, or Spotify. And you can find me on social media at the Be Real Babe or the Be Real Babe podcast on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest. I'm all over the place. Y'all can find me anywhere. And as always, guys, thank you so much for the support, the understanding, the appreciation. I hope you like my new vibe. I've worked very hard for it. But you guys would have seen that in the last episode, or if this is your first one coming back, over 200 episodes. We changed it up a little bit. So yeah, as always, I hope you're enjoying. I appreciate you. And if you have a story or an episode you want to be a part of, I am always here. My DMs are always open. Please just shoot me a message because you and your story are fucking important. And I always want to make sure you feel that way, especially if you're on the show. But with all that being said, I'm going to shut up because this is a 2-hour amazing episode with two powerhouses that I am personally absolutely inspired and motivated by. All right, babes, it's time to get on to the show. And with me today, I have two very special guests joining me in the studio for their third time. I'd like to welcome Torva and Donovan to the show. Hi, friends. How are you?
Hey.
Hi.
Thanks for having us again.
So excited. Oh, I'm so excited for you guys to come back. Hope you guys had a good summer, good fall.
I said, oh yeah. Wow, it's been a while.
I know.
This whole year has been just, I don't understand where time is going. I'm just now starting to feel like grounded again, and like I'm kind of following along with the passage of time. Like I don't know where summer or spring went or what happened, or I don't know.
I absolutely feel that. And we're just before we jumped on talking about how most of us are starting to feel a little winter depression setting in. I feel, Donovan, you're feeling that too, because you guys are such outdoor people.
I stay miserable the whole winter as all the rain just brings me down. I'm not a real West Coaster because real West Coasters really like this weather apparently, and I can't stand it.
I
Can't stand it.
I can't. I don't love it. I think Christmas is the only thing I look forward to, and then like January to March, I'm like, just get rid of them.
That's the worst.
That
is the worst, yeah.
Because
the Christmas is over, the lights come down, there's no warmth, and it's all just like, when is spring gonna get here?
Yes, absolutely. And I will say I do love the look of like winter and the lights off of that. But if I could just stay off the roads and just maybe on up top of the houses and where it looks nice, like, I feel that's something that weather mod should be used for, maybe just not, just kidding. But I agree because I was just thinking back before our episode when we met, it's almost been like a year now. When I commented and was like, Donovan, I would love to have you and your wife on your show. And then all of a sudden it was like DM. Hey,
Boom. Hi.
and we've been like this ever since.
Yeah, it's well right now, I mean it's November 2nd and I went public with my story November 6th.
Almost
So,
exactly a year. And
yeah.
that's, I
All that
remember,
happened in a year. Oh my God.
and
Like
Oh
I
my
that's,
said,
God.
where does the time go?
and that's
But all like
exactly,
it's yeah.
sorry, that's why exactly I wanted to have you guys back on too, because I feel like I'm very blessed and thank you guys again for being on the show so many times and sharing your story literally live as it was pretty much happening to you. Because even, right, like I had you on Torva, and then like literally as
Yeah.
I'm going to interview Donovan, your round two is happening, and I'm like, um
Yeah.
guys, what's happening? Not but like, so
Yeah.
thanks for being on that. But I wanted to bring back because even though it's been a year, it's felt like, I'm sure for you, I'm just saying for me, it feels sometimes like 5 years ago that I met you, but having
Mm.
the realization that Jesus Christ, that was less than a year ago.
I've
And
aged
even
5 years.
yeah, oh, no, I know. And that's, I just, so anyways, thank you for being there and letting me be a part of your
Mhm.
story all throughout the whole time. And I don't think your story's ending, obviously. I think this is just the end of that chapter. And now you're in the
Yeah.
chapter of healing and helping. And that, I'm just, it actually gives me goosebumps right now, like thinking of that. So yeah, I just wanted to have you guys back on because that's both of you doing that, right? In all different
Yeah.
avenues.
Mhm.
And I just
Yeah.
appreciate that so much as a team, as individuals. So just in case maybe we haven't had some guests are coming in listening, sorry, some listeners are coming in for the first time and maybe they don't know who you are each. And let's start with there and then we'll start in with Torva's story. So maybe we'll start with Donovan, just a little high level, who you are, how we can find you. And then we'll go into Torva and then right into this, to the story.
Yeah, so people know me online and in the real world as Coach Donovan because I'm a personal trainer and certified health coach. And this is something I've been doing for well over a decade, helping hundreds of people reclaim their health and fitness. And I basically have become specialized in dealing with anything above and beyond just basic, boring weight loss, is the way I see it. I've been doing this too long, and I no longer take basic clients like that. I take people that I like to say are, quote, fucked up, people whose health has crumbled, people who have fallen through the cracks of the healthcare system, people who have been abandoned by their doctor or told there's no hope. I like the challenge of taking on clients like that because I like to see how I can improve their health by natural means. I'm a supplement guru. I know almost as much as ChatGPT I'd like to think of about natural supplements because I've been doing this since I was 15 and I'm 45 now. And natural supplements has just been a big part of my life. I take a ton every day. And I've helped people overcome all kinds of crazy diseases, put things into remission like rheumatoid arthritis and um, any kind of chronic disease, severe injuries, help people recover from strokes after doctors have said you'll never get the use of your limb back. I've just done all sorts of things, and that's what I like to do. So when I say I'm a personal trainer, don't think of me as just a guy who trains people in gym to lose weight. That's where I started, but I've evolved since then, and I get more joy and satisfaction out of really truly helping people at a deeper level.
Totally. And that's one of my favorite things too. It's like, about this situation for you, Torva, was just like what a resource to have for you, right? Like specifically
Yeah.
through your healing too, right? That was one thing I always thought that was really neat about, specifically about your guys' relationship, like one thing that your spouse nerds out on, very much is going to help you, I feel like, for life and for future. So like, some spouses, not shading, are
Yeah.
like into video games and stuff, and like, but when it comes to this, it's really nice that you're able to take all that
Yeah.
knowledge that you've been building for years and then help your spouse. So I just absolutely love that. And I love where you're going to, because I agree, like fitness for me when I started was definitely for like the chiseled abs and to look lean and, all those things. And now it's like, what can I do so I punch harder? So like if someone was attacking me, I could just fuck them up, or like, the strength and looking at it as an athlete versus like not bikini model, because I'm far from that, but you know what I'm saying? Like, the vanity portion that comes with
Yeah.
being the lead in the fitness industry versus just the cool effects that you get from taking care of your body, right? Because I'm sure, Torva, with everything, you're just like, I'm sure your fitness has also changed and how you view that too, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's certainly much more of a privilege now than I ever used. I mean, I used to go drag my feet to the gym, and I don't want to blah 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 blah. And now I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's go to the
Yes.
gym. Let's go to the gym. Let's work out for 2 hours. Like, there's nothing more important in my day anymore than anything having to do with health and fitness and recovery. So
Yeah, I love that. And let's start with you too. Like, obviously we know this part of it, but there's more to Torva than calling out the government. My
I
favorite
don't
part
know
about
about
it.
that. I don't know if that's true. Um, so my name's Torva Logan, and other people know me as Kristen Logan. So Kristen is my birth name. Torva is a given name that both have followed me around, and people always ask me like, which do we call you? I don't care. But online, you can find me as Torva Logan. And so, my story is that before all of this happened last September when I was diagnosed with cancer, I was a healthy 40-something-year-old. I had a career doing marketing, but also was building a business as a business and life coach, working specifically with female entrepreneurs, helping them feel empowered, stepping into leadership. And the cancer kind of gave me a new sense of purpose. And I know we'll get into my story and everything, but when I was diagnosed last year with stage 4 cancer very unexpectedly, I went from being like healthy 43-year-old mom to now all of a sudden I have an aggressive cancer. I knew immediately that there was going to be some new purpose that was going to come out of this, and helping people find the courage to raise their voice against injustice, like true injustices in the system, like our healthcare system being fucking broken,
Mhm.
and being the person that can just stand out there in the open, regardless of what people think of me, and say what's real and what's happening. Showing that side of myself was really, it was great to be able to do that, and now to be able to help other people find that within themselves. Even that was immediate. People started sharing their stories with me, and I started connecting them to the media, and kind of like, you can share, you can do this, you can be brave. Like, people were telling me how scared they were, afraid they're going to lose their doctor, or afraid that they're going to be ostracized. But seeing me come out and say, hey, this happened and this is bullshit,
Mhm.
helped other people do the same thing. And we created so much pressure on the government, within a very short span of time. So, and now I have taken, so I actually got my start doing the business coaching aspect from, I've been doing that since, gosh, I was like 26, 27. And shortly before about a year before I got sick, I took a course and I became certified as infinite possibilities trainer, which basically means that I'm a manifestation coach. And that's not something a lot of people know about me.
I did not know.
So I'm trying to, I know you didn't even know.
I did
I'm
not
trying
know
to,
that.
yeah, I was kind of keeping it on the down low because that
Why?
was one of
Help
those
me.
little things like, but that I know saved my life. Like, that was a huge factor in why I'm still alive right now. And so I take that with my mindset and my life coach and my business, all that stuff, and I'm helping women who are going through cancer beat it, and I'm helping women who have survived, like, really develop that sense of meaning and purpose in their life afterwards, and stay in their survivor's mindset. Because, like, when it's over, it's not over. When you ring that bell, your cancer journey has not ended, as much as we would love to believe that it has. But you have to treat it like a chronic illness.
Yes.
It will come back. It can come back, right? So,
And I think that's so important. And even just knowing you, and even for myself, when I said that to you when we were talking earlier, is that, when I first met you, like, obviously I'm terrified of cancer still. Do not get me wrong. I'm not saying I'm not. But when I first met you, I just really seen the immensity of it and the lack of hope and the lack, watching you go through it. I actually started getting terrified and being like, not only was I scared before, but watching you have to go through all of this, I'm like, now I'm extra scared, to being like, holy fuck, I feel so privileged to know you guys, because I know that if that happens to me, that I have the right, like, getting away from the fear mindset, which is what
yeah,
you talk about, and going into the hopeful and empowered mindset. And just by you sharing stuff on social media, I already feel myself like, if I was to ever go through that, I feel so more empowered because I know individuals like you and Donovan. And that's what I mean, just by social media alone and posting that, I just have this like sense of like, well, I know I've got a team behind me that would fight with me and teach me all the things. So I hope that you know that even those that aren't affected personally with their family or whatever, you are still inspiring and giving a lot of hope and less fear about something that is one of the most feared things on planet Earth, right? I would say. So
Yeah.
just, yeah, girly, it's making an impact. Don't worry. And that's why I was like, I'm so proud of you. Like, fuck.
The fear around cancer is very real, but it's also, so it's not real, but when I'm going to say that it exists by manufacture. Like we are conditioned to be afraid.
Absolutely. And I
And
didn't
that
think
should
about that. Yeah.
set off alarm bells right there.
Yes. Yes. Well, and we've talked about that before. Like the industry
Yeah.
itself is very lucrative financially,
Yeah.
and I feel like to keep people sick, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to have them in fear, right? And not
Yeah.
feeling
Oh,
like they're
for sure.
hopeful,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
let's dial back to last year. And I'm so excited you told me about that. I can't wait to see what you do with that little drop of manifestation coach there. And like, and isn't it beautiful though, when the universe drops things like that for you, and maybe you didn't understand at the time why you did it. You probably had alternative thoughts, and then you look back and you're like, shit, that helped me a lot more than I expected it did. I just love little things like that.
Well, one of my reasons for taking it was, I kind of had, I had a vague sense of purpose, like, empower women. Like that's always been my vague sense of purpose. But I was like, I want to do this because I think it's going to get me closer to my actual purpose. Like I feel like if I do this, then I'm going to manifest my true purpose. So
Have you
lesson
circled that?
here.
Have you circled around that a little bit? Just kidding.
Yeah, I did. Right. So
So
yeah,
interesting.
things happen to you for a reason. So they don't just happen to you, they happen for you.
That's
So.
very true. And Donovan, I never asked this before, but prior to Torva's diagnosis, had you had any experience with, cancer in your family around you, or was this a whole new world for you?
No one has ever had cancer in my immediate family. Maybe a distant, like a grandmother I hardly knew had cancer on my dad's side, but I don't really know their side of the family, but that's it that I ever know of. And strangely enough, over all the years that I've been helping clients, I've seen so many crazy kinds of health conditions. I actually haven't had a cancer person come my way. And I've always thought that strange. I'm like, cancer's everywhere. Why am I getting all the diabetes and all the, autoimmune condition people and all the, injured people? Like, where are the cancer people? How come they never come my way? And then it just happened to be my wife as the first person. Like, well, there you go. And not only just any cancer, but a stage 4 ovarian cancer, which is um, one of the most deadly cancers that there are. It's what is it, 5% survival rate for over 5 years?
No, 30. First stage four,
First
30.
stage 4?
You're thinking recurrence rate.
Oh, that's the
Yeah.
recurrence, right? Yeah. So
The
it's
recurrence rate is 95%,
it,
90 to
it's
95%.
the cancer that loves to come back.
No,
I
thank
feel like
you.
that should
I
be a
like.
song. I, I do want to
um,
say, like, just, my mom has had cancer twice.
okay.
And, even she was like, what I experienced was nowhere near what you experienced. Like she had a very rare, but like kind of slow type of breast cancer that was caught in stage 1.
Yeah.
And then about 5 years ago, she had melanoma, which was caught at stage, I want to say 2B or 3, something like that. Like it just spread locally. And they were able to get that out, and she had to go through immunotherapy. But my parents are so reserved and they don't live near us. So it
Okay.
wasn't like we were really a
Stay with
huge
that.
part of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So they were very kind of quiet and on the down low about what was going on. I mean, we knew what was going on, but everything, called them, everything's fine, so, but she told me later, like nothing even,
Nothing
like
major.
when I got off the ferry to go stay with them, they were like, you looked like we could tell you were weeks away from dying.
Yeah. Oh
So
my gosh. Was
yeah,
it the first time or the second time? Which fairy?
the first time,
Okay.
the
That's what I
first
feel like. The
time,
second
the
time you
one where
probably
I
weren't
was,
hot either, feeling hot either.
no, but I wasn't. I don't know that you couldn't look at me and say,
Mm,
you're 2 weeks away from dying. You just look at me and say, okay, you're vomiting and you're in pain and you need to be in the hospital now.
that's very fair. Whereas
So
like the life felt like, well, and at that very first time you hadn't had received any treatment, right? And the second
no,
time it was just from, it was, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of a surgery post-op possibility that could have happened.
but
Was it
yeah.
second
So
time?
the second time was a complication from the surgery.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though both times they failed you there, but at least, like, so I could see where the first time
Yeah.
is like your body was like, and let's go back to when you're first diagnosed and you started having problems again, just for
Yeah.
those that maybe have not have heard, right? Because there was quite a bit of time between your initial issues and being told that, essentially you got to poop to, oh shit, this is stage 4 cancer.
Different doctors, obviously.
Yeah.
So it starts with like the very vague symptoms, right? And that's kind of this is very cancer in general is insidious.
Mm-hmm.
This one is also insidious because there is no early detection. There are no tests that will, that you go get 3 times a year. It's not, or, every 3 years or whatever. It's not detected by pap smear, and imaging and all that, like, isn't standardized. Like, it's not like, oh, we should screen you for ovarian cancer. It just doesn't happen.
Mm.
So, my symptoms started with kind of feeling tired and run down, trying to build a business, and I was doing some CrossFit coaching, and was working full time, and parenting and all this. So I was kind of like, okay, I'm just run down. So kind of tried to readjust my life around that. I'm just getting more and more tired. Then I started having like tightness in my chest when I'm exercising, and so the first time I go to the hospital for that, I think it was around May, and the doctor, took an x-ray of my chest. You're not having a heart attack, pats me on the head and says, it's panic. You're having panic attacks. I'm not having panic attacks because I've had a panic attack, and that's not a panic attack. So I went to my doctor with it, and she said, oh, it's probably exercise-induced asthma. Take this inhaler. That was kind of the first failure because I think they could have done more tests. They should have sent me to a pulmonary specialist or something. But anyway, so I started taking the inhaler, and it worked. It works just fine, right? Still getting kind of tired. And now I start looking at my face occasionally. Like, this is about June. And there's times when I look in my eye area and I'm like, I look really like I've aged, like rapidly overnight. I start having menstrual changes. Like, I had a period that went on for like 2 weeks, but it was like light and spotty. And so it was kind of like, oh, that's just, perimenopause.
Every time you
And
say what it is, that's a doctor trip, by the way.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
not just me.
Yeah.
And
That's
I'm
the doctor
starting to,
dismissing it or, calling it something else.
yeah. And I started getting bloated all the time, and I started having to like pee a lot. So, I went to the ER again for one of these things. I don't remember which. And the doctor was like, well, you're fine. And I said, well, can I get a UTI check? He's like, you're not having urinary tract symptoms. I was like, actually, I am, da 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 da. So he does the test. It comes back negative. Nobody thinks anything of it. And now August comes around, and the bloating is happening. And it's like affecting my rib cage area. Like, I'm feeling these weird pains just around my ribs, like here and there occasionally. Don't know what the hell's going on. So we go to I call him the irritable bowel doctor now. I go to walk in, and the doctor is like so dismissive. It's irritable bowel. I'm absolutely sure of it. He even palpates like my abdomen, which should have
Twice.
been twice,
Twice.
right? So what
Just
was
to be
actually going
sure.
on is I had fluid in my abdomen, and he should have been able. I've asked other doctors, like, he should have picked that up. He should have been able to discern that.
I've
He
asked around
listened.
too,
He
and it was a
listened.
lot of fluid.
Yeah, it was a lot of fluid. I took a liter out only a few weeks later. So anyway, so all that goes on. This is August. Fast forward now. I wake up September 1st, 2 days after dropping our kid off at university for the very first time. I wake up with this weird pain in my left side, thinking I must have pulled a muscle when I was running. But we, like all of us who do fitness, we know, like, when you pull a muscle throughout the day, that slightly changes a little bit. Like, in a certain position, it's more painful or less painful. This stayed exactly the same. So all of Friday goes by. I leave work early. I go lay down. I don't know what's going on. I go to sleep. I wake up at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and it still hurts. So, like any smart person with a cell phone, I pull open my phone at 3 a.m., turn the light down low so I don't wake Donovan up. I'm looking, I'm like, what could this be? And I start seeing scary things about like my, like I could have fluid in my lungs, or it could be a kidney malfunction or something like that. So I go, well, it's, at this point, 4 in the morning, this is the best time to go to the ER. So let's go. So I quietly sneak myself out of the house. I go to the ER, and, all the tests start happening. They put me in the CT scanner, and they see that I have fluid in my lungs, but I don't have the symptoms of pneumonia. So at that point, they were going to just be like, well, you have fluid in your lungs, and send me off. Donovan showed up just at the right time and said, you need to put her back in that CT scanner and scan her abdomen, please. I had asked for it, and they said, no, your bloating isn't related
I don't think I
to,
said please.
No, you didn't. You
I
did,
think I
actually.
think I was
You were
already
very emphatic, though,
yeah, I
which
was
you
already
did
getting
say.
nasty at that point. I'm so sick of doctors and their bullshit.
But this was like, I had four doctors in this time span. So from the time I got to the ER, it was about 5 a.m. till the time we walked out the door at 10:30, 11 a.m. I had four doctors. So doctor number two said no. Doctor number three showed up right around the same time that Donovan did. And Donovan was like, will you please scan
I didn't
her
say
abdomen? Yes, you did. You did. Anyway, in my mind, you did because you're nice. Anyway, so they did, and then doctor number four got to come and give us the news that he can't diagnose me with cancer because they couldn't actually see a tumor in my ovaries, but he said this looks like metastasized ovarian cancer. So, and then
And
the first
that
question
was
Donovan goes was, okay, what are her odds of living, and should we leave the country?
I know to ask questions like that because I know that in this system, first of all, that doctor already overstepped his bounds. He wasn't even allowed to say as much as he said.
Right?
He said it because he damn well knows at that point it wasn't pneumonia. He's a fucking
Yeah.
doctor. He's seen this how many times in his career?
mhm,
Yeah.
But he also knows that for the right person to be able to say that this is cancer, that's going to be weeks and months down the road because that's the
Yeah.
oncologist's job. But being a human being, after all, he fucking knew Kristen's life was about to end. And that's where he said, because I was asking the right questions, right? I didn't want to hear any more about pneumonia. I already knew it wasn't pneumonia. So shut the fuck up about pneumonia. Let's talk about the fact that it looks like cancer because it is, right? The way he described it, omentum caking,
Hmm.
like that means the whole inside of her abdominal wall where the fatty tissue is was caking and becoming thick. And to me, I know that this is cancer.
yeah.
And that's where he said, if
And
you have
fluid.
the means,
Yeah.
I would suggest looking outside the country for cancer treatment if it is a cancer. And he goes, I had a friend who recently went to South Africa for cancer treatment and it went really well because he couldn't get treatment here in time. And this started the whole thing, the whole ball, like, we weren't running yet, but that already planted the seed in our minds that this was going to have to be potentially a possibility of fleeing the country to get treatment because it wasn't going to happen fast enough in British Columbia.
Yep.
And that's fair to say that's like Canada wide too, right? Like it's not
Canada
like you
Yeah.
wide.
guys could have fled to
Yes.
Ontario or
Oh, for
Alberta
sure.
or
Well,
like
you can't just decide, like, you can't just go to Alberta or Ontario and say, hey, sign me up for cancer care. Anyway, but it is happening everywhere.
yeah.
Absolutely. I've gotten stories from every province.
Right, right. And I think some people think like, oh, it's just British Columbia. Like, y'all, I
No,
know that we know that BC
No.
is the worst, but it's not. It's Canada. Yes, BC has its legislations that are making things worse, the policies, all that. I know that, but it's
Hmm.
Canada entirely. And I think you guys both had mentioned that most people that you know too will have to flee the country to do that. Or I think Donovan, you said you had clients that were going down to Mexico for their
oh yeah,
treatment. Yeah,
oh yeah,
that's
the
massive.
idea was already there. That's why I was asking
Yeah.
those questions too, because
Yeah.
I have people that have like had to flee the country for all kinds of reasons, for medical reasons. um so I knew that the system was already good, like set up to fail Kristen.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
even the doctor meeting after that was, I think, the family doctor, wasn't it, Kristen? That's where
Hmm.
she said this cancer will end your life.
Yeah. Yeah. September 5th, we met with our regular doctor, and that's what she said. And Donovan's asking like, well, how long is this going to take? And she was kind of, I don't want to say she didn't really have a strong answer as to how long it was going to take to get through the system, but she was kind of like, a couple weeks. And then we're asking, well, should we go somewhere else? And she was kind of dismissive of that too. So we started looking at it ourselves. I'm in now playing the waiting game. First, before that, I had to actually play this game of find the cancer because, like I said, they couldn't see a distinctive tumor on my ovary, even when they did the ultrasound, which I don't know how that's even possible because I had a CT scan 2 weeks later in the States. There it is. Anyway, so they couldn't see it. So they couldn't say that it was ovarian cancer without doing like a laparoscopic biopsy, cutting you open basically to decide, hey, is this cancer? And so they're like, maybe it's breast cancer, maybe it's uterine cancer. So I had to go get all these, like, I had to go to get a mammogram, I had to get a uterine biopsy, all of these things going on before they finally said, let's draw some fluid and see if the fluid is cancerous. And they did, and that's actually how I got diagnosed, was from the fluid in my was it the abdomen
But
or the lung? I can't remember. Yeah.
that took some delays too, didn't it?
I got that done, was done on the 8th, right? So went to the ER on the 2nd, the fluid draw was on the 8th, and the diagnosis came in on the 18th.
Yeah, so that's a long time while allowing that cancer to grow,
Just to get
waiting,
diagnosed. And this
just to
is a
get
very
yeah.
aggressive cancer. Ovarian, this kind of cancer that I had, stage 4 ovarian high grade serous carcinoma, is the most aggressive kind of ovarian cancer. It's very fast moving.
And you weren't allowed to even be put in the waiting list to see an oncologist until proof came back that you indeed had
Yeah.
ovarian cancer. So all that time was wasted.
Hmm.
All that time through the month was wasted just sitting on our ass waiting for the stupid fucking fluid biopsy to go travel around the province because it has to go get sent off to
To
go
BC
sit in a
Cancer.
lab somewhere.
Hmm.
It sits in a lab, and when they get to it, they get to it. Meanwhile, the cancer is growing at a super accelerated rate. And I said, "Can't you at least get her in the system now?" No, we're not allowed to. It has to come back confirmed cancer. So like, just it was so
Hmm.
ridiculous. Like it's almost like they want you to die by just
And
slowing you down as much as they can.
the other thing too, we asked the doctor, okay, well, since we don't know what kind of cancer it is, can we just do a PET scan?
Mhm.
No, I'm not allowed to prescribe that. An oncologist has to prescribe a PET scan. Huh?
Why?
Like, so we have to, yeah, I don't know. Good question. Yeah. It's really gatekeeping is what it is. And it's gatekeeping at the expense of people's lives because, what's a few lives?
Like
And
at this point, all the
and
doctors know it's cancer. They're all talking about it as a cancer, but on paper, it's not cancer yet.
Yeah,
So they're
right.
not allowed to do anything.
Hmm.
and this is what I'm talking about, like regulations and stuff. Like I thought we were
Yeah.
in a business to help, not business, but for lack of a better word, to help and heal people. But we just want to make money. And I know I'm not sure. I don't think you've ever said, Torva, that you were offered maids, but I think you said that you have known people that have been offered that as opposed to
Yes.
like treatments. Is that fair to say?
Yes, actually, here, there's a lovely woman from my Zumba class who was just told the same thing. Like, this looks like a stage 3, or I think stage 3 ovarian cancer. And in that very one first conversation with her general practitioner, who can't even tell her that she definitively has cancer because it has not been biopsied, she said, "I can help you get made if you'd like." And I'm so, and my this one woman, like, and I were talking, and she was like, that really freaked me out. Like, how bad is it that she's already talking about maid? And I was like, yeah, I would like to slap your doctor in the face, to be honest, because that's a really irresponsible thing to say. And
And
I
yet,
have I've had people say to
Mm.
me, and yet there it is, right?
and
And
yet,
yet
well,
she says
no.
it, no impunity at all. They get to say that, and I've heard other people say that they get some kind of like compensation for that, which I haven't looked into myself.
I
I
don't
wouldn't be
The
surprised.
doctor, but then also the doctor knows that this patient is going to get jammed up in the system and this cancer is aggressive. And so when doctors are offering that, there's also the thing is they pretty much know you're going to die. If you're going to stay in Canada, you got a pretty good chance you're going to die because
It's a
the
lot.
system's too
I
slow.
I don't think the first like meeting is the first meeting is like, hey, do you have the means to leave the country to get treatment? Maybe that's the first thing you say instead
Yeah.
of, hey, you have this cancer. And it doesn't look good. Was the other thing she said. It doesn't look good.
Oh,
This is a
I,
general practitioner. Like, they don't know fucking shit. I mean,
but
they know more than I do, but
oh, for
like,
sure.
this just takes me to this whole other place of like, there is this really evil like thing that goes on in British Columbia in particular, in Canada in particular, where doctors are so adamant about not providing hope. It's like it's not even that they don't provide hope, it's like they want to take your hope away. It's evil to me because there are so many studies that show how important your mentality is. Like, I mean, get right into the nocebo effect. Are you familiar with the nocebo effect?
I don't, not enough to be able to say it with my English words.
Well, let's see if I am with my English words. So it's like the evil twin of the placebo effect. It's
Oh,
basically what happens when you believe that something like If a doctor, so here's a great, I'll use an example because I think it's the better than me trying to explain it. The example is there's been several incidences where someone has been told that they had a terminal cancer and that they had like 2 weeks to live. They die within inside of that 2 weeks. And then when an autopsy is done, like this guy that had esophageal cancer, he was told he would die soon. He died within that time frame. The autopsy revealed no signs of terminal cancer. So he believed so strongly that he was going to die that he up and died, right? So like it's the idea of like negative expectations can cause physical symptoms and in some cases even death. So when doctors are out there giving negative expectations or even taking away positive expectations, there is real harm that happens from that.
That makes so much sense. And not to like sidetrack for a second, but even in just like thinking about like the whole mind control and how like there was that thing where they said that they had, like 18 people, one person was a
Yeah.
civilian, 17 people were army people, and they were like showing like a clear triangle, but everyone that
CIA.
said square. Yeah, CIA,
It was
right?
CIA.
And I
Yeah.
feel like that falls into the same thing where if you're going to all these doctors and these practitioners and all they're saying is like, shit, it's not looking good, and I'm not saying you can't be realistic. Like, I understand that there's a fine line, but there's also fucking bedside manners that also come into play here, where I feel like
Yeah.
there's a loss of empathy and that just goes out
Hmm.
the door. It's like, do you realize, like, I understand that must be hard. I'm not saying that. I have no idea what medical practitioners have to go through mentally. I get that. At the same time, though, your job is to relay this information, and if we know mentally starting them people off on a positive note or just giving good advice, not, hey, this isn't looking good. Do you want to use maids? Like, Canadians know
Yeah.
about maids. Canadians know that maids is an option. To
I
me,
think
you don't need to say it.
MAID is like, I think I just saw somewhere recently that MAID is now like the fourth leading cause of death
Yes,
of Canadians.
it is very true. Yes, and I guess we have
Fourth.
more than one state in the states. Like more maid programs in our entire country.
Yes.
Like in sorry,
Hmm.
how did that go? It was like sorry, no, in all of the states, I think it is. We have more than all of the United States than they do in Canada for this program. Which, if you think, I
Yeah.
think that's
There's
something like
only a
that.
few states. There's only a few states that will that offer it, and Washington State's one of them. So from what I've understood from like talking to people there,
Mm.
it is really difficult to. I mean, it's not really difficult to use. It's available, but it's not as commonly used, and it's certainly not pushed by doctors. It's available. You can ask for it, but you have to, I think, go to court to get it. Like it's not just here, sign this. Like what was that? I just got a story shared from me. We can go off on maids. Let me tell you what. But it was a woman came from was there was an injunction. Sorry, let me start the story over. So a woman came from Saskatchewan with she had a mental illness. She came to Saskatchewan because her doctor in Saskatchewan denied her MAID, as she should have, because it was just a mental illness. And I'm not downplaying mental illness, but it was treatable. It's completely treatable. And the woman just wanted to die. So she came to BC to see a doctor in BC who has become so well known for providing MAID that they did a documentary about her in the UK.
Mm.
And within 24 hours, a single visit, this doctor had signed off on this woman getting MAID in a single visit without consulting her previous doctors at all. So this woman's partner had to actually get an injunction from the court, and thankfully BC actually granted that. Kind of spry, to be honest, but I'm glad they did. They halted. I'm sorry, yeah, she was Albertan, not Saskatchewan. But anyway, yeah. So MAID is like handed out like candy here.
Brandy, you're scared of getting cancer. I'm more scared of getting made because I don't think people look into what it actually is, and I have concerns that it actually will rob you of the spiritual experience of death. And the reason is the drugs that they use to kill you are actually just surgery drugs. Midazolam specifically, which is a benzodiazepine, and propofol, which is another surgery drug to knock you out. And if you've ever had surgery before, you know that you basically have no awareness. You're not dreaming, you're not seeing things, hearing things, like you really are out completely. And then you wake up and you don't know where anything happened, right? And I'm concerned that, like, I don't want to die that way. I don't want to have a nothing experience. If there's a afterlife, if it starts in the brain somehow, or like I feel like the brain is important to be able to function and go through that natural process of dying. So wherever you think you might go after life, like you might get there in your head at least. If not, like that's the portal where your soul leaves through that experience. I don't know. I don't have those answers, but it scares me to think that death could actually just be like going under for surgery where you just blink out and that there's just nothing.
It's almost like you're
Um,
tricking the experience, like the human
yeah.
experience. And I guess it boils down to what you think of, like religiously, spiritually, like
Mm,
from my understanding, if you go through trials and tribulations, and this is just one theory that I've heard, but if you do then unalive yourself, you kind of start back from square one on your story because you're supposed to go through all the hardships that you
mm,
were meant to learn, like people say you talk to the creator before you're born. What do you
yeah.
want to learn? You want to have courage? Well, you're going to have to go through some shit. I'm going to have to scare the fuck out of you to get that kind of courage. And I'm
Yeah.
not, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
those answers either, Donovan, but I'm also the same thing. All of these things, what is that taking from us spiritually? And I think we can look at
Yeah.
a lot of medical practices that way when we look at surgery, when we look at childbirth, like what does the medical industry have gone in and made better, but actually have taken the spirituality, the human piece
Yeah.
of it, again, to relieve stress and like suffering, of course. But I think to your point, there is a fine line of like, and to be honest, I've heard some horror stories of, not to sidetrack, but again, if they're offering this to
Mm,
cancer patients without understanding that there's a lot more abilities to heal, and that's not just the options. I've also heard that people have woken up and it's like what is described as like feeling like you're being drowned from the inside. And to your
Yeah.
point, I don't want to pass away like that. Like,
woke
sorry,
woken up from like while the maid procedure was going.
yeah.
So I'll explain that because I have some experience with midazolam and propofol specifically, and I'm known as a patient that would have a paradoxal experience. I
Mhm.
had a surgery a couple years ago. It was just for a hernia, and
Yes.
I don't work well with benzodiazepines. They don't necessarily calm me down. They can actually make me agitated. And I went into a hospital, and I explained all of this to every single person every step of the way before I got on that surgery table. And I even had a bracelet on that said, "Do not use benzodiazepines." And when the anesthesiologist saw my bracelet, he's like, "What is this?" And I'm like, I explained to him, I said, "Benzodiazepines can actually cause the opposite effect, and I'm concerned you have another drug you can use to knock me out." And he goes, "This is what we're set up for. Like, I'm not set up for any other kind of procedure. So you can either get off my table or we go ahead." They made me sign the papers because I'm like, well, I need this fixed. And sure enough, over this 50-minute procedure, I was screaming, yelling. They could not knock me out. And they were using actually a combination of midazolam and propofol. These are the exact two drugs they use in MAID. And so it doesn't surprise me to hear you say that people have woken up. And that also scares me because would I be one of those people? And they had to use so much extra doses on me to try to knock me out. And then when they did, I suddenly stopped breathing and they had to try to intubate me. But then I woke up again and tried to pull the tubes out. And it was like a fucking horror show while I was on the surgery table for like less than an hour.
He was
Um,
panicking, like, and all of
yeah,
this is in the surgery notes. Like,
I had this
he
was
didn't
all in the
remember.
surgery. Yeah, this was all in the
Yeah.
surgery notes that I read after. So I don't have a memory of doing this, but I warned them because, I've had panic attacks throughout my life, and I've tried to use benzodiazepines, and I'll never touch them again. They're a nightmare drug, and because I have paradoxal reactions, so it doesn't surprise me that people would wake up because you know what? People wake up during surgery all the time because
All
they're
the
like me.
time.
They're paradoxal reactions, right?
Yeah, totally. What a fucking
So
nightmare.
I don't want that to
Yeah.
be my death experience. Fuck
No.
that.
And to
What?
your
And
point,
I will never. I don't care what's going on. I will never take maid. Thank
no,
you.
absolutely not. And again, I've had some members of my family and extended that I completely understand the need of it, watching certain things, at the very end of your life. Like, I can have compassion for it. What I don't have compassion for is offering it as if it's such an easy answer when it's really not. And the point of it makes money grosses me out. They talk about saving money in the budget, that grosses me out.
Yeah,
And I
Hmm.
just want to say too, Donovan, just because maybe your mind doesn't remember, I guarantee your body's going to remember
it
that
does
Yeah,
scenario,
remember.
right?
it
It
Like,
does
does.
remember.
so it's
Yeah.
like you might mentally not know, but your body
Yeah,
could still be
my
reacting to
body
that
knows.
trauma, and it will
It
know. And when you
does.
When
go into a hospital, it's probably like turtling,
mhm.
like. I want to go here, you know, and that is, people don't think about trauma just because you don't remember it.
Hmm.
Well,
Because
my body remembers because it
right?
took many months. It took many months to get those surgery notes, and they mailed it to me. And when I read those surgery notes, it was the late afternoon. I was really shocked reading that. Like I felt so bad for this guy. Like, oh my God, he's freaking out like on these drugs. And then it keeps saying in the surgeons they had to keep dosing me and dosing me, and they had concerns like they were overdosing me. And then they did. All of a sudden, I just like stopped breathing. So I went from like freaking out to not breathing. This is supposed to be like a very basic surgery, by the way. This is like a very, like, it's just stitching up a little hole in my abdomen. Anyway, that night when I went to sleep, I had a massive panic attack in my sleep. Like, it just
Yeah.
shot out of bed, like screaming. So even though I consciously don't remember doing all those things on the surgery table, my body does remember.
Well, and then right after that, that's when you started getting the what do you call it?
Interesting.
With the fingertips.
Oh yeah, then my hands, I got some sort of nervous system thing happening where the blood vessels in my hands and feet started not dilating properly according to temperature, like they're flushing red all the time, blood pooling in the skin, and it was just this, like it was the next day. It started the very next day after I read my surgery notes
Yeah.
and had this big panic attack. So yeah, the body absolutely does remember, like,
And I don't think that's talked about enough. Again, like I've had people, and just
No.
like off topic, even just being like, "Oh, just get your boobs done." It's like, that is a fucking major surgery. What are you
yeah,
talking
it's,
about? Like, okay,
yeah,
sure, but what are the repercussions of all those things? Like the way progression goes sometimes, and how we can do things. Like just because it's available, I think doesn't always mean we need to use things. Or
yeah.
things are
Yeah.
bigger than they are. And I think one thing, like tying it back to your original diagnosis, I think that upsets me is like that you've told me is that there's not much that people know or know what's of prevention. But it feels like the signs that you had, like I think you said the water portion, like is telltale signs of cancer, isn't it? Like, so what do GPs actually know to be able to at least get you through the door to oncologists? Like, is that like, I feel like maybe they don't know enough to be able to put you in the right spot. Is that fair, or am I just being an asshole?
No, some do, some don't. You know, it's really a matter of you've got to know yourself. Like, I'm sorry, but you cannot just surrender this knowledge and this hope that your doctor's gonna know what to do with you when you go in with vague symptoms. Like, you need to know what's going on in your body, all the possibilities. Don't just Google and then freak out. List the possibilities. Like, no, like we knew from we started looking up what this bloating was, and it was like it could be irritable bowel, it could be this, it could be this. Ovarian cancer popped up. Now, dumb us, we have learned our lesson, but we both were like, nah, it's not that. Because I was pretty healthy, you know, at that time. I was running, I was lifting weights, I was eating fairly healthy. So we were that's ovarian cancer. You know, but we knew what some of the things could be that it was. So you cannot just outsource to your doctor this idea that they're going to know what your symptoms are, what's wrong with you, and that they are 100% correct. Like, there's a reason why it's talked about to get a second opinion. Good luck doing that here right now when you can't even get a doctor. But so you have to play detective too. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it sucks, but it is your body, it is your life.
Like how
So
doctors tell you not to Google things. Yeah, you absolutely should Google the things because chances are your doctor's gonna fucking dismiss you and be dumb as fuck.
Or they're
And
gonna Google it.
well, yeah, I've been there. The doctors actually Googled shit. Like I know more about medications and diseases and like, oh my God, are you seriously Googling that in front of me? Like you don't know? Oh my
That's,
God.
I have
Don't
seen
don't tell
that.
me not to Google shit. Like if you're the doctor and you're literally doing it in front of
right.
me.
I'm just saying. And people's experiences, I always feel like everyone discredits experiences. And I'm not saying, like, what is that, causation equals correlation or whatever the fuck that saying is. But I do think experiences are important to hear, because my
Yeah.
biggest thing, and I'll go to like just breast implant illness, for example, let's just say. That is something that no one really knows. Now it's more talked about, but they don't know. They can't diagnose it, da 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 da. But then you always hear people's stories, and it's like they go to the doctor, they test, negative, negative, negative. Nothing's wrong with you. And you know how women found out that they had breast implant illness? Other women were talking about their experiences, and they're
Right.
like, "Hey, this is all happening to me." And then people started being like,
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden now there's a group of 100,000 women that are all saying, "Hey, my titties are killing me." So now women that are coming up with implants have immediate thoughts of, "Hey, maybe my doctor doesn't know because maybe doctors aren't on Facebook groups." I don't know, but
Mm.
like You know what I'm saying? Like those
Well,
sharing
who,
those experiences are huge.
how many studies have, I mean, if it's not in like certain journals that they read,
Yes.
then they're not going to know,
And they're not going to want
right?
to.
So,
Like, you
no.
know what I mean? Not rudely, but
You
like,
have to, you have to print out for something like that or something like what I had. You have to print out the symptoms and you have to print out like the diseases and say, these are my symptoms. These are the diseases that these could be. Let's start playing
yes,
doctor.
that's an actual doctor.
Investigate.
Figure it out. Does it
Yeah,
not?
let's investigate.
Yes. And I just
Yeah.
So
feel like I'm not sure if it's the system or where we've gotten or how it is, but I just feel like there's just like a chunk missing. And I feel like that's where more like naturopaths and you know, like and real like coaches like yourself that are getting to the like core of things, the
We're,
basics, right? Is that fair
yeah,
to say?
absolutely.
Yeah, I hope that's where we keep going
That,
because in your experience, Torva, I know you said you were very health conscious, but now like I love how you're sharing what you're doing now in prevention of the cancer. So I don't want to necessarily jump there too quickly, but that is one thing that I absolutely love that with you guys is now looking at the prevention. And is that something that you feel that we were kind of maybe obviously you had stage 4. It's not like you'd be like, how could I have prevented this in the moment? But does that feel like
yeah,
something, that information that was robbed to you when you got like diagnosed? Was there any talk of like how this came to be or
no,
what to do in prevention? It's just like, you got it,
not,
these are the surgeries, c'est la vie.
yeah, yeah. The oncology um, MO, like they don't talk about how cancer comes to be. They're just like, it happens. Cancer happens. And here's what we're going to do about it. So, I said I was fairly healthy. I want to be clear too, because I know this is something that's been talked about on your show. I was overweight. And that is, there are, I think, 8 cancers where obesity is a risk factor. And I was classified as obese. Like if I look at the last 7, 8 years, I think of those, there's a decent chunk where I would have fallen under the BMI standards as obese. I know BMI is junk when it comes to physique and da 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 da, but you know what? If that's what they're using to determine the risk factor, then we don't actually know if it's necessarily fat, what fat percentage is okay.
Yeah.
So I was categorized as obese. And so that was absolutely a risk factor. And it was one that I, even knowing what I know, knowing that that was not good, I was working on it, but not very aggressively. I didn't take it very seriously. And I think that was certainly a factor. There's other factors too that, nobody talks about. Another one, like, was it last year that the study came out about tampons having all that toxic metal?
Yeah.
I used them for 30 years. So there hasn't been a lawsuit yet, but I will not be surprised if there is one.
Mm-hmm.
Asbestos is another risk factor for ovarian cancer and lung cancer that's been well documented. And I want to say this too. There's a lot of people like, yeah, well, we don't really know all the things that are causing cancer. And, these studies are just happening and coming out. That's not true. Even in 1900, we already knew dozens of carcinogens.
Mm-hmm.
1900,
Mm-hmm.
1900. That year, we already had dozens of carcinogens documented and established. So this isn't new information. Like we're 124 years later,
Mm-hmm.
and cancer rates are going up. So, but then there's other factors too that nobody wants to talk about because it's difficult to study and it's not profitable to study anyway. So why the hell would we? But things like resentment. Gabor Maté talks about type C personality. And this is basically linked with people who are cancer prone, so to speak. These are people pleasers, people who suppress emotions. They're overly responsible, or they feel like they're responsible for everybody's well-being and they overextend themselves. They're conflict averse, like they're striving for harmony at the expense of their own personal boundaries, or they'll avoid confrontation. They're self-critical, hyper independent, meaning they don't ask for help or support. They think they have to do everything on their own. They're chronically stressed out, even at a low level, even if it's not like, I'm so stressed out, but
Yeah.
they're just kind of like, if you're all the other things I just said, you are stressed out.
Yeah.
I don't care what you think about yourself. Like, you're probably like, I'm a little stressed, but I can handle it. Like, no, you're stressed. Like, yo. So all of those things were true for me.
Mm-hmm. That's very fair.
And that's actually going to be the hard part for my health, is dismantling those things.
And that's
Yeah.
so important you
So
brought that up too, because I think that you're very right, is that a lot of people don't want to talk about not how they got there necessarily. And I'm not saying that everybody, but what is your piece in it? Do we look back and say, what got me here? And, sometimes it's your genetics. It's not, but I think that's so empowering to look back and say, hey, you know what? I wasn't the healthiest and I could do better. And like, same with me. I'm like, I sit here and I freak out about
Yeah.
cancer, yet I'm a huge stoner. So like, am I doing all the things to prevent myself from, and at the same time though, like I think you can't also beat yourself up every second that, you have a bad day and you have to have a Sprite or a Coca-Cola or something, have a drink, like I get, we're humans too. We have to have a balance, but personal responsibility is huge, I think, when it comes to your health, right? Like you said, knowing your body, if something's off, but if you're on a bunch of medications, on birth control, especially women with birth control, I find it so hard to be connected to my body when I was on birth control. I'm 5 years out. Let me tell you, I will tell you whatever phase I am in my cycle just by feeling my body and my emotions because now I'm so connected to it.
And it all comes down to personal responsibility. And if you're not prepared to take personal responsibility, then, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you're not going to do as well. You can't abdicate that responsibility. Again, it's your body and it's your life, and Donovan, with so many clients you have, I mean, how many of them like are successful when they just abdicate their personal responsibility?
None of them.
Yeah. So.
And that's good. And so such a good point too. And
Yeah.
and like it starts with baby steps, right? Like I think everyone thinks that they need to change everything overnight. And it's like you can really just start small. Start walking.
Yeah.
Start
Do what
making
you
better
can with where
choices.
you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And make it into
I
a
didn't.
lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not doing 100% of the things that are kind of on the list of things to do yet. But I'm doing what I can right now, and I know that there's more that I can do, and I will. And it's a journey. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes,
Yeah.
and a lot of stuff too, you've had to change your whole entire life for that too, right? Like not even just your physical health because of the cancer diagnosis. You guys had to move. You had to get your stuff, like guys have gone through so much. And that's why I just
Yeah.
absolutely adore both of you is that you just cheer each other on and you just like, do you just look at each other and go, at least we have each other? You know what I mean? Like, I just love that. As much as you guys go through stuff, I'm so happy that you have each other. But there's been
Yeah,
other
honestly, like I really thought Kristen was going to die. I know we kind of veered off with the story here, but the moment we met with the family doctor after that first CT scan, and she said like this is really bad, and I'm like, how bad? And I kind of like made her say it. Like, is this going to kill Kristen? Yes or no? Like, I need answers. And she goes, this cancer will end your life. From that point forward, I believed that Kristen was going to die because we didn't have a plan to go to the United States yet. And then even when Kristen did flee to the United States for healthcare, um, so much time had elapsed where that cancer was not being treated. And I thought, okay, even if they get to her at this point in the States, it's just too late. And so
Yeah.
now when I look at Kristen, I'm still in disbelief that she's alive. It's very weird, because somehow my brain was working on preparing myself for the loss. And then the loss didn't happen. And so sometimes it's like, oh my God, are you really here? Like I just have these moments. Um, and I thought I was weird in that, but actually just last week, my kid texted me from university, and she was saying that she feels this way, like she's mourning the loss of her mom even though her mom's alive, so her brain went there too. And it was almost comforting to know that she's going through this right now after all this time, like it's like just trying to catch up to it all. um
Even I, the other day, I know it's Halloween, but there was a part of me that kind of went, what if I'm dead and this is all just like, I don't realize I'm dead. And,
Is it
it's like,
Beetlejuice?
am I gonna find out that I see dead people for a reason?
Yeah, that's very fair. Or like someone said there was like this thought where it's like where you think you're gonna die, you actually do die, but you just actually don't. You just continue on in a different timeline. That's like going back to like the Mandela effect and all that. So
mm,
like
Oh,
some
yeah.
things shift, but you don't die, but you actually do, and you're just like in a little bit of a shifted timeline with just something a little bit different. And I thought that
yeah,
was a really interesting thought. So it's like maybe you did, and but you carry on because your soul carries on, and maybe now you're in the Bernstein Stain Bears, whatever. Maybe Pikachu
Berenstein
has a line.
Bears?
Yeah.
The
Whatever
Berenstein
those.
Bears?
Yeah, whatever that Mandela effect is of the Berenstein
Okay.
Bears. But I thought that was super interesting. But I would love to go back to that, Donovan, because I think that's something that I also really wanted to focus in around on this as well. And sorry, Torva, not that your feelings don't matter, but as
Oh,
someone
they,
who
yeah,
watched,
no, yeah.
right, as someone is watching this too, and that's such a good point that it's like your body's preparing, it's kind of going through the grieving. But is it fair to say because they've also instilled this fear in you that you could lose her and that it's going to come back? So maybe that's a survival mechanism of your brain of still holding on to that in case
Mm.
that one day does in fact become a reality because they've made you believe that it very much is going to be. Is that fair to say, maybe?
Well, yeah, it's not really over. Um, Look, the stage 4 ovarian cancer is the cancer that loves to come back. It leaves behind stem cells, and those stem cells lurk in the body for many years until they decide at some random point in time to start regrowing into the exact same cancer, and that could be anywhere in the body. It could even be your brain. And so yeah, there's a big part of me that I'm still bracing, but at the same time we're fighting aggressively against a reoccurrence with a fuck ton of supplements that work against cancers and ovarian cancer specifically. And Kristen's really good at the mindset stuff, like she's a mindset coach. And personally, I suck at that. My strength is the natural supplements. I always go to the darkest places in my mind. But
That's how you accent each other so well, though.
yeah, um, I put a lot of my own faith into, the biochemical realities of cancer and fighting cancer. Um, and it's an amazing thing, that nature has all these things in place that can actually kill cancer cells. And you can concentrate these wonderful things into capsules and powders, and you can make drinks and blend drinks and juice drinks and do all this good stuff for your body to fight this cancer, because there is still hope. And we've actually met another woman here in town, and I've always been asking him, like, where are these people? Where is this 5% that's never had a reoccurrence and they're still alive 20 years later? And we actually met this magical person, actually ended up being a hairstylist here in town. And she survived a stage 4 ovarian cancer and never had a
20
reoccurrence by
20
20 years.
years.
This is
They
extremely
told her she
rare.
was gonna die. They told her
Yeah.
she was gonna
Well,
die.
not that,
Yeah.
not to that, but like, good for her. Fuck,
This
like,
is
why do you?
extremely rare.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And she's in
And
your hometown, or where
she's
you are
right
right
here in our
now.
hometown, and we both had our
My
hair cut.
hairdresser.
Yeah, we both
Yeah.
had our hair cut by her.
I went for my first haircut after all of this just to get trimmed and looking less like crazy. And yeah, and she sat me down and she said, "How long has it been?" Because she knew. And then I asked her, her experience, and she told me, stage 4 ovarian cancer, and I was just like, shut
The fuck
up.
up. Twins, not
Yeah.
something you want to twin, but
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for after,
So
though, I think it is really nice to be able to connect, right? Because as much as I can sit here and empathize and love and support you, I'm never fully going to understand that, right? And maybe she won't either. I know everyone's cancer is different, but at that
yeah.
level too, and surviving it. And to your point, Donovan, I think that's great. Finding people that whatever illness you may have that have overcome it, and fucking ask them, and I guarantee you they'll love to tell you. Like I don't know anybody
Yeah.
that survives anything that doesn't want to share that with everybody to
Well,
make sure that they're aware.
I think, there's to lend more credibility to the mindset aspect. This isn't just any kind of person, this lady. Like, she's a very quirky person, and she's got a very strong personality. She's in her late 60s, I think, or maybe early 70s. Um,
Late 60s.
Late 60s. Before I ever knew that she had this cancer, I had some conversations with her because she's older and she owns the salon, and she works like 6 days a week. She works at like 2 times the speed as like her other stylists who are in their 20s. Like, she's fast and efficient. And she told me she's never going to retire. She doesn't want to retire. You can't retire, she said. I'm like, what? And she's just very strong personality,
Yeah.
and she works hard. She's got a really strong work ethic. I like dropping in on them without an appointment, and they hate that. And she's the only one that will take me. She's like, "We'll do this in 5 minutes. Let's go!" Right? And she's just that kind of person. And I think cancer runs from a person like that. It doesn't stand a chance in that kind of a body, and a person who's willing to fight. And Kristen is that kind of person. She's super tough, tougher than I ever knew she was. Like, I always knew she was tough, but I didn't know she was this tough to kick a cancer
Thanks.
that I thought she was going to die from.
For sure. And that's got to be hard
Yeah,
too, right? Trying to
it's not the
remain.
same kind of fight.
No, no, definitely not. And it's
Yeah.
like, doesn't matter how strong you are. Like, yes, it does. But at the same day, right? Like, I'm sure you did all the things that you were supposed to do. And sometimes it could take you down a little bit. You did everything in prevention for your surgery,
Yeah.
like you guys were on it, you got home and something happened, right? But fuck, every time it's just like, I worry about you, but I also don't, if that sounds weird. Like, maybe I have a little bit of that like potential grieving of like that being the thing, but at the same time, I don't know why I just feel like you're just like always. I'm just like, no, it's Torva. She's got it, And like I said, I always do use you as motivation too if I'm being a lazy ass or I'm like, but she is lifting way heavier than you, and she just beat cancer. So
Yeah.
your ass to the
I
chin.
have
Um,
some weird genetic, yeah, it's
I love it
something weird
though.
genetic, but so, I don't think of fighting like I'm tough. It's a toughness, but it's a mental toughness, and it's not like the same as pretending that you're tough or the same as, trying to be strong for everyone around you. You have to allow the fear, the sadness, the grief, like all of the feelings that you're going to have, you have to allow that. You can't just pretend that it's not there and just be like, I'm gonna suck it up, because that's not what's needed. What like that's not where a true positivity comes from. It's not just like, okay, just suck it up, be positive, like sweep it under the rug. Fighting cancer or healing cancer, you have to be willing to turn and face that fear, the grief, experience it, allow it to happen and be part of you. And then you have to be willing to also let it go, because people will hold on to it and say, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. The fear isn't protecting you.
Yes.
The grief isn't protecting you. It's real, it happens, but then you have to say, okay, now I'm responsible for shifting out of this into, maybe something else. Like maybe I can go watch an uplifting story, or, whatever the case may be. Like there's a lot you can do to kind of, I have a whole free
Yeah.
course around this, the survivor's mindset. It's like 15 days of specific tools and techniques that I used to take myself when I would go down into the dips of grief or fear or whatever. There was, remember a time where I was like just screaming bloody murder and crying my eyes out. To take myself from those, I had like a whole toolbox of things that I used. And so people can sign up for this. Just go to my Instagram, because it's probably the easiest
Yes.
way to do it.
Yes, and that's one thing that I think is just so wild that you're like able to turn around and flip this and help people right away. And the fact that you had that previous training for, your career before, and like you
Yeah,
said, you got that purpose and you very much know that this is it. This is, supporting anybody. And I think anybody, whether they're women with ovarian cancer or not, you're there to support and help. And like I said, even just watching your
yeah,
stories help because I don't think I would be as aggressive and advocating if I hadn't met you two, I think about my spouse. Like, what if we go into the hospital? I'm gonna have to be his advocate, just like Donovan was for you, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't think it's
and vice
just
versa. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. You have to be there for each other. You have to have an advocate. That's why I'm so excited to have Sarah and Nordia come on and the Canadian Frontline Advocates because
yeah,
that they're what they want to do is be like people's Donovans. That's I'm going to tagline that is that's what they're trying to be, right? Going in there and making sure you're being listened to and well for them they have the knowledge to help you, but at least advocating for more
yeah,
testing. Like if something's wrong with you and you know your body and you feel like something's off, keep pushing. I think is fair to say to your point of like knowing your body. If something doesn't feel right and you got one test and it says, okay, well, you don't have that, but something doesn't feel right, when you know your body, keep pushing because they don't
yeah,
know your body. You do, though.
People trust
yeah,
their doctors too much. That's been my experience. They, with my clients, they get concerns and they go in, they get a test, and then the doctor says, it's nothing. I ask them, bring in your lab reports. Let's look at it together, and then I'll catch things on there that the doctor just brushed off. I've even seen doctors brush off fatty liver. You got your elevated liver enzymes. They get a scan that says fatty liver, and the doctor's like, "Yeah, you don't need to worry about it." It's just so asinine. Um, and yeah, people just trust their doctors, and when they're just, "Yeah, you're fine," like, but then the problem keeps going and they're still not feeling well, but they say, "Oh, but my doctor said everything's fine." Like, oh my God, like you you put too much faith in the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
and
it's
if
I,
you're
just
I would
doing,
say, I would say so. Having Donovan there throughout like the beginning stages, and then again when I was in the hospital, like he knows so much
Mhm.
that it did save my life many times over. So have a Donovan if you can have a Donovan, or hire an advocate, but or work with someone. But always, regardless of their level of knowledge, you should always bring someone with you,
Mhm.
at least for the reason that they will hear and potentially, hopefully, take notes. Guys, take notes when you go to the
Mhm.
doctor, to the ER. You have a witness,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, you need one
Well,
sometimes.
that one doctor before we left, the doctor that said your cancer was just irritable bowel, I
Yeah,
was there as an advocate, and unfortunately, in that instance, as hard as I tried, that failed. That doctor was so insistent that you had irritable bowel and told you to
yeah,
take Metamucil. And I said, look, I'm a health coach and I deal with irritable bowel all the time with my clients. She doesn't have really any of the symptoms of irritable bowel. This is not related to eating. This is a constant state of bloating. There's no gas. There's no constipation. There's no diarrhea. These are the classic hallmarks of irritable bowel. And he waved me off because I asked him. I said, like, well, how are you coming to that conclusion? He literally waved me off, put his hand up to cut me off, and said, I'm sure of it. I'm sure it is irritable bowel. You just need to take Metamucil. That's the end of it. And we lost, oh God, how many weeks did we lose after that appointment of just like
uh,
being gaslit? Was that like
yeah. Because the
a
next
couple
time we went
weeks?
in, it was earlier. It was like I want to say almost a month, but yeah, it
And they
was a few
lost your
weeks.
referral too, right? If people don't know, right?
Oh,
They lost your
yeah.
referral to BC Cancer.
Yeah, so I'll just skim through the rest from
Yeah, sorry.
diagnosis, right? No, it's
We've been all
fine. It's
over.
okay. It's okay. So diagnosis, they get September 18th. Get told, you're going to be a priority, but there's a wait for surgery. So you're going to start with chemo, which is fine. That's normal. That's what they ended up doing in the States too. But you're a priority. Okay, well, when am I going to hear from an oncologist? I can't tell you. Okay, so we're waiting, waiting, waiting. Every day that goes by when you're experiencing cancer, every day that goes by is like a century. Um, so anyway, by September 25th or so, I decide I'm done. I'm leaving. I decide to go to the States and risk it. I have no idea if I'm going to get VA benefits or anything, but I have to try, right? So I'm in a wheelchair at this point, and I go to the States and I get set up oncology with BC as well. Like this is a phone consult. So I take the phone consult while I'm also trying to go through the US system. I talked to the BC oncologist October 6th and he says, yeah, you're absolutely a priority. I'm going to try to get you in like for treatment next week. And I was kind of like, okay, we'll see how that goes. 5 weeks go by. I hear nothing from anybody in Canada. By this time, I have finally I've gone through the VA, I've gotten a referral expedited, I've gone to see my oncologist for a consult, I've had my first chemotherapy, I've had my port placement, like all of this has happened. And then Donovan and I are talking. Actually, yeah, we were talking. It was today. It was a year ago today. It was second. I remember that we were talking, and I was like, I wonder whatever happened to that. And Donovan was like, you should call. You should just call. Call people. Like you need to know what happened. And I called, and they called me back the next day. They being the Campbell River Hospital Cancer Center, and they're like, we don't know who you are because I called BC Cancer. They didn't even bother calling me back. They just told, oh yeah, there's some lady. They called the Campbell River Hospital and said, you need to call this lady.
This
And
is
they're
the
like, we don't
easy.
even know who you are. Do you have a referral number? Have you even talked to a BC oncologist? Who are you? Anyway, turns
No,
out
go
because
say
they
four
called,
things.
I told them the doctor's name. They tracked it down, and I found out that indeed they lost my referral. Like he never sent it.
The
Kind
oncologist
of a
never
big
sent the
deal.
referral.
Kind
Yeah,
of a big deal.
which he was very apologetic for later, which is great. Thanks, I appreciate that. But I would have died waiting for treatment in that
And that would have been
situation.
on his hands for being the one that didn't send that in after he said he would rush it. He totally forgot.
But and now how much, like I've told him and I've told other people, how much blame can we lay at his feet?
Yeah.
There is a system here that puts so much demand on doctors
Yep.
with so little support. I've also since heard BC Cancer is a completely, especially on the island, very toxic workplace. And when you think about who the medical director of BC Cancer is, that's not a surprise. Dr.
Not at
Kim
all.
Chi, the
Very
violent
chill.
bike thrower himself.
Very
But
demure. Very
yeah,
mindful.
so yeah, so that all happened. It ended up being a good thing that I went to the United States, right? I got the port placement. That doesn't tend to happen here. And that saved my veins from all the chemo. I got, surgery with some of the best hands, and I got HIPEC surgery, which heated intraperitoneal chemotherapy. This is not offered in BC to ovarian cancer patients, even though it is a standard for ovarian cancer patients in many other countries and even in a couple of other provinces. But here, God knows it's very, very gate kept. It actually helps to increase my survivorship and reduce the chance of recurrence because Donovan was talking about the stem cells.
Yeah.
It's basically a warm chemo wash in the abdomen, which helps to get rid of some of those stem cells and hopefully all of them.
Let's
So
not
I
do
wouldn't
that.
have had that here. I
Let's
wouldn't have had that here.
And
No.
you wonder why they're reoccur. Not trying to be that way. And I'm not saying that's the reason. I'm just saying.
Yeah. There's
But
not enough
reoccurrence.
studies. Yeah. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, you shouldn't do chemo at all. You shouldn't do any of those things.
What the
And
fuck you
that's
feel you
that's
need to do?
everybody's journey.
Yeah.
I did not have time to play that game.
Mm-mm.
Like by the time we were told stage 4 ovarian cancer, like when your lungs are filling up with fluid, and you're losing weight, time's up. There's no time to experiment, and that's exactly what we would have been doing. Like we were starting with ground zero. We knew very little about this cancer. We did try to kind of slow it down because we're like, okay, well, we're waiting, we're buying time, but we really weren't able to do that just with the few things that we had tried in that span of time.
Yeah.
Now, when all was said and done, they wanted to give me a PARP inhibitor, which is a oral chemotherapy. They wanted to put me on this for 2 to 3 years, and this drug has some of the same side effects in that not the hair loss, but with the lowered blood counts, so it really lowers your immune system.
Mm-hmm.
And I said no, I'm not doing it. The efficacy of it was questionable. Like it buys me maybe a few months, and I was like, I'm not going to do that. So I'm not taking any oral chemotherapy drugs, which is unusual for people who have had ovarian cancer. Usually the standard is some kind of maintenance chemo, but I said at this point, there's so much that we can do to prevent this recurrence, and I'm here for that. I don't want my quality of life hurt by these chemotherapy drugs. I want to be able to go out and live my life again because I know that is a huge factor in me not having cancer again. Is living a life that is happy and enjoyable and that is active and my immune system is working. Like how are you going to knock my immune system out and then expect it to beat cancer if it tries to come back?
Yeah. Or anything
Well,
that comes
that's
to your
why
body.
that's why we're slamming your system with like a pile of natural supplements that are
Yeah,
studied to work against cancer and ovarian
yeah,
cancer
Mm-hmm.
specifically. So we're not doing
yeah.
nothing. We're doing actually a lot of things.
Right. I mean, I'm not doing
Original
anything
medicine.
standards.
Yeah.
We're doing all, and I think what we're doing is way better,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yep.
So
Yep. And that's
It's
such a good point. Sorry, Donovan, not to cut you off,
yeah,
but I know we've talked about that before where people, have there's so many opinions of how people's treatment should be. And I think it's an individual and family choice that no one but
yeah,
that person can understand or comment. And as
yep,
much as I hate Western medicine's progression sometimes in allopathic, at the same time, it is miracles and has saved a lot of people I care about.
yeah,
And I think in the moment you have to decide what's best for you. But like to your point, it's like, okay, now going into something where I could potentially use more time and do things in a different way, that I'm going to try and do it the best way. But in the moment where you're life or death, like I said, it's great to have all these natural herbs and supplements. But if I get in a car accident and my arm breaks off, like I'm not
yeah,
going to put some fucking sage on
yeah,
it and then,
yeah,
hope that it heals. I'm going to go to the
yeah,
hospital and get my arm reattached, right? But we
yeah,
do get, and I'll say for myself, I've definitely been like, fuck, I'm not going. Fuck it, I'll die. I'll bleed to death. I got through that. We're over that now, and you very much have helped me see the beautiful side of Western medicine and how it can completely help you. But to your point, if you continue with that and you're after, is your quality going to be good? And you have tried to give yourself as much informed consent to be like, these are the risks here, these are the risks here, way out. I'm going to go with this option, and I'm going to make this informed consent instead of just being like, you have to take a medication. There's no other way. This is it. This is it for the end of your life. And who knows what risks
yeah.
could, like, do we know for sure that those things prevent? Do we know that could they make it worse if you're lowering your immune system? I feel like that could have other implications that maybe aren't worth it for this particular process.
Right. You have to weigh it. You have to weigh it all.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's sayings out there about how Western medicine is good for acute care, but it is not good for chronic care. It
that's not
doesn't
good for
know.
chronic care.
It's
You
not,
know
yeah,
how
chronic care. Go
they
ahead.
treat autoimmune conditions, chronic autoimmune conditions. Doctors will literally knock out your immune system with very powerful drugs, and like some of them are actually chemotherapy drugs, and you just take them forever. That's the solution. And I've had clients like that have come in like sick as a dog, and the side effects of these medications are, by the way, one of them is cancer.
Awful.
One of
They're
them is
Mm-hmm.
cancer
awful.
because you need an immune system to fight cancer,
Just a thought.
and yeah, and so little, but these doctors don't realize that if the patient is willing to work hard, because it's not fucking easy, you
Mm-hmm.
can, in many cases, alleviate or put into remission an autoimmune condition through nutritional approaches, dietary approaches, and lifestyle approaches. It's hard. And one of the things that I've used with clients is autoimmune protocol paleo diet. It is a rather restrictive diet, but it works. I've seen it work, and people have actually come off those drugs that knock out their immune system and actually gone
Yeah.
back to a normal life and enjoy the quality of their life. But they are the types of people who are willing to do the work. And unfortunately, not everyone's like that. Some people are just fucking lazy and they'll never change. And
Mm-hmm.
so they'll take the drugs and they'll be miserable and sick. And that's it. That's the end of it. Right.
Yep.
Like it's not everyone can do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
just a reality. I
Yeah.
wish I could say something more positive, but I just know people. I've worked with people so long. I know people. There's those that will and those that won't.
And
Or
I
you
feel
won't
like,
until it's in your face, right? Like, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that was you, Torva, by any
oh,
means, but
and
I feel like a lot of people don't look like it doesn't affect me, it doesn't happen until it does. And then it's like, oh, fuck. That's why I like to
yeah,
talk about stuff so
but
people
that's the
know.
thing. When people ring that bell, like they're told basically like you're done, yay, it's over. Yo, no.
The hard work comes
Like
in.
everybody has a chance of recurrence at some level. Either it's a secondary cancer that comes from, like think about, you've just blasted yourself with all these chemotherapy drugs, radiation, all the scans, all of that. So like you have a slightly increased risk of a secondary cancer. You also have chance of recurrence depending on the stage and the type of cancer that you had. So it is up to you, right? At this point, like it is not over. I think it is a more critical time. Those first 2 years are the most critical.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take the bull by the horns and say, okay, this journey has just begun. I have just walked through a gateway and I'm walking into my new self. I am not the person that got cancer, because the person that got cancer, the person I was leading up to that diagnosis, is unlikely to be the person who doesn't get cancer again,
Good point.
right?
Yep.
Doing what you did before isn't going to get you where you want to go.
Yes. And I think that's such a lie when everyone's like, well, people just have cancer. It's cancer. People just get, and it's like, no. Like, why are we lying down and being like, well, that's the numbers. And like I said the other day, not to be this way, not to be morbid, but I don't know, you guys growing up, didn't people just die of fucking old age? And now it's like, oh, well, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like, why are we
Yeah.
just normalizing this and thinking it's okay? And to the
No,
point of like, okay, cool, you got the diagnosis, you got the treatment, not cool,
yeah.
but you know what I'm saying? What got you here? Why aren't we talking
Right.
like this? You weren't born and all of a sudden God was like, this person's having cancer, like maybe, but you know what I mean? Like,
Well, and people are trying to say like, oh, we're just now,
we
we're
just have
just,
it.
getting better at diagnosing it now. Bullshit. You don't miss cancer. Like, it's very rare. Like, fine, it maybe in the 1700s they missed
Yeah.
it, but okay, 2 in 5 Canadians now are being diagnosed with cancer.
Mm-hmm.
1 in 4 are expected to die from cancer. 1 in 4 Canadians are expected to die from cancer. That's a lot. And it is one of the leading causes of death worldwide. In the US, 1 in 2 women, 1 in 3 men are diagnosed with cancer. 1 in 8 women get breast cancer. 1 in 7 men get prostate cancer, or are affected by, is the way they term it, but we know what that means, right? So these numbers are staggering. And yeah, cancer is a very lucrative industry, and they benefit from keeping you alive, but there is no profit in the cure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you cure cancer, all of that goes away. All of the need for all of these treatments, these expensive pharmaceutical drugs, these expensive surgeries and procedures, and like does oncology go away? I don't know, but you don't need as many. It's just, and I'm not saying we haven't found a cure for cancer. What I'm saying is there will never be an acknowledged cure for cancer.
Or an effort
And
to try and prevent it.
Right. The
like
effort
globally.
the effort to cure it
Yeah,
is not really there.
no.
And a lot of these organizations like the American Cancer Society and even I would even say Ovarian Cancer Canada, they are being sponsored by pharmaceutical companies. Like, again, warning, warning, warning bells are going off here, right?
Yeah.
So there is it's a cyclical kind of industry that's like taking care of itself. And I don't care how conspiratorial that sounds. It maybe, but follow the fucking money.
Always.
Follow the money. It does not point towards a cure. It points towards more tests. It points towards more drugs. It points towards vaccines now.
Mm.
They're piloting a vaccine for ovarian cancer.
We know how I feel about that.
Right. I think we all feel the same, right? So I'm not, yeah. Anywho, so
Interesting.
it's a very lucrative industry, is my
I would
point.
like to
Go ahead.
point to that. Speaking about that, because up until like the pandemic and understood corruption or anything like that, I was a very big supporter of like Canadian Cancer Society. Like every time there was a relay, your girl was in it. She had a team. I was the top earner in Grand Prairie one year. I helped raise over $10,000 because I actually did
Wow.
photo shoots.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of companies together. I did a bunch of photo shoots for free to raise money for it. I did sales. Like I was top earner. I had a bunch of people. I was going really hard on it because there was people in my lives that were like being lightly affected, not by the standard that you are, but I was like, how can I help?
Mm.
And so I did this. And the year after it all happened, and not to be this way, not that I thought that $10,000, but literally nothing changed and everything felt like it was getting worse. And I just thought, that seems like such, and I'm not saying that 10 grand could have solved, but it didn't seem like any of the hard efforts that I did went to anybody. So now for me, it's like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to donate or share individuals that are going through it. Like even not even going through GoFundMe if I can. Like give me your fucking email and let me put that money right into your bank account, because although I do believe obviously that people are going through cancer and treatment and need that money, I don't think the money's being utilized maybe properly, and it's really hitting people that impact that are in my lives, right? So
Mm.
I was just find very suspect to those big corporations now. I think this was like probably like 8 or 7 years ago. Just when I became a photographer, I really wanted to give back to the community, and that seemed like the right way. And after I kind of felt like it was all for nothing, not like that, but you know what I mean? Now that I look back, I'm like, fuck, if I had raised that 10 grand and gave it to you directly, that would have made a huge impact to your life. But that 10 grand didn't hit people, I don't think at all, even close.
Well, so okay, so the money goes towards funding cancer research, right? Which I'm going to put a pin in that. We'll come back to that. Let's all discuss that. Providing support services, advocating for public policies, right? And they only put, so in 2022-23 fiscal year, they invested about 46% of their total money generated into um, into cancer research, I guess. Yeah, and innovation programs. All right, so cancer research. Does that necessarily say cure? No, right? So where does the money go? Again, they're a nonprofit organization, but there's still money to be made in nonprofit organizations. There's still profit happening. Like it's just meaning they're not allowed to be specifically for that purpose.
Who checks them?
I
Who
don't
checks
I
them?
don't know. I
Nobody.
mean, allegedly the CRA would have
I'm
to,
sure.
but
Just like
they're
Health
too
Canada
busy.
and the FTC are so good at doing all those things, and the
They're too
FDA and
busy
all that.
chasing they're too busy chasing the little guy down for CERB
Bro.
payments.
Yeah, and they're all connected, or they leave like a government agency and then they go to a big pharmaceutical rep. Like, to your point, Torva, always follow the fucking money. And I don't care if that makes me look like I have the biggest tin hat. My tin hat has gotten a lot of wins these last couple years, let me tell ya. So
Yeah.
you can fucking reflect the sun off of my damn tin hat, because whether it's nefarious or not, it's not being managed properly. Point blank, period.
Whether it's nefarious or not, exactly. That's a great point. Like some big, large organization, you're
Mm-hmm.
telling me is, you have to pay for all that overhead. You have to pay for all those salaries. Like it becomes like the government where it is so layered with bureaucracies. It's putting more money into taking care of itself than its original mission.
And the people. Like,
Right. And
Yeah.
again, cancer research, what are we talking about? Vaccines for cancer? Are we talking about medications for cancer? We're talking about just trying to do, meta studies that say like, well, if you eat this thing that we've already shown multiple times is carcinogenic, then yeah, you will get cancer. Like what exactly? where is the cure in any of that?
Yeah. And when you know
So
something's carcinogenic, and my understanding is not everything that's carcinogenic leads to cancer. I understand that. Like a lot of scientists will be like, well, there's all of this and it's in your body, and I get that. But also, like, I think seen that thing where it was like in October, instead of companies just changing everything to pink, why don't you just stop selling cancer products? Or, and like, I think my biggest problem is when people say something's safe. Okay, maybe it is. But accumulatively, let's look at women, for example, makeup, perfume, lotions, hairspray, nails done, eyelashes, hair done. Da, 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 da. Okay, eating, that's not even eating food and the shit that you're breathing. Are you telling
right.
me that the little toxins and all of those little things and carcinogens aren't going to add up and have an overall effect? And I'm just going to be safe all the time? Like, no one is ever
Yeah.
going to do those studies on an individual level. So how the fuck can you say everything is safe and not say everything comes with risks, actually? Because we can't test what your personal makeup is going to be, taking all these different toxins in your body and how your liver is going to handle getting it out of your system, right? So it's just
Yeah.
like, I just think
Because
it's
if you
so
did that,
misleading.
the economy would collapse if you
I
did
know, I
that.
know, I know, I
Which
know.
good. I mean, good. No, I think that's good. Like, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
very
I'm
good.
a little nihilist. Like, tear the whole fucking thing down because it's broken and
Yeah,
it's killing people.
yeah,
So,
totally agree.
I'm really like starting to cultivate on my Instagram. I'm loving like these people that are like going so hardcore homesteader. Like they're sewing their own clothes and they're doing their own canning and growing and like hell yeah for that. You
Totally.
know, yeah, it is exactly what I think the internet and the world needs is like the antithesis of what we've become, because what we've become is killing us in so many ways. Cancer is just one of them. These autoimmune conditions that Donovan sees all the time is another. Like
100%.
they're just all the illness, the chronic illness, yeah, anyway,
Does it
the
come from
suicides.
consumerism in a way? Like, I always wonder that, like, over consuming everything, like over having in every aspect, over eating food, over putting stuff on us, in us, around us, clothing, like all just excess of all of that seems to be a detriment to health, like,
Yeah.
and I feel like Donovan, is your main message going back to the like primal diet. It's like all that extra stuff is adding extra inflammation, which I
Yeah.
feel is then adding to your drink, like your lymphatic system, and all of those things play a part. And I think when you boil it back and you go down and go back to the basics, that's where you're seeing the most results in your clients. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's a strange thing that when you call eating a primal diet a diet, like being on a diet, that's a sign of how sick society has become. Because when people turn and look at you and say, "Oh my God, you're just eating meat and vegetables and fruit and nuts and seeds," that's a crazy restrictive diet. Are you fucking kidding me? Humans ate this way for 2 million years. We evolved eating that. That's called a human diet. Just like your cat has a cat diet and your dog has a dog diet, and you feed them the things that they evolved for millions of years to eat, you need to feed the human the things that they evolved for millions of years to eat because that's what their body expects.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for some people to wrap their minds around it, and they'll criticize and say, "Well, that's a restrictive diet." And so, I wish, I try to get my clients at least to look at it like this way: this needs to become a lifestyle. It needs to be sustainable. And the good thing about eating primal is it's actually very flexible
Mm-hmm.
because you can eat high carb, low carb, moderate carb, whatever it is, because we all evolved in different places on the planet where you could be as far north as what Inuit are, and like think of a diet of what they eat, or maybe Polynesian style diet where there's fruit all year long. There's all these ways to play with it, but the common factor is you're just eating real food, and you're not eating the processed junk with all the chemicals and the additives, the colorings, the fake sweeteners, all these things that cause cancer. But it's so hard for people to give up the crinkly packages and fuck, man, like I get clients that are like in their 20s and 30s, and sometimes I think they're as old as me or older than me because their bodies are so worn down from life, from the things they've done to their bodies, the things they've consumed. And yeah, cancer is just going to be one of those things inevitably, and that's why more and more of us are coming down with cancer. There's many things you do have control over about your body, and some things you don't, like the air you breathe. This
Yeah.
we're all sharing the same polluted air,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, you still might get cancer even if you do all the healthy things. But you got to do what you can control.
Mm-hmm. I was like that saying too. It's like when you have a flat tire, you don't go and like slice the rest of your tires, right? Like, so just because you're not always going to be able to prevent what you're breathing in and all that, what can you
Yeah.
control, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I've been down the path of like, I'm not going to breathe any air. I'm not going to drink water. Everything is poisoning me. Like, I 100% have been there, and it's not a healthy place to be.
Yeah.
But back to my point of just starting slowly, like my biggest thing was like, okay, let's get my food out of plastic. I felt like that was a very easy switch over that, was a little bit costly at the beginning. But now I
Yeah.
actually keep my Tupperware or whatever, glassware, fucking 10 times longer than the plastic ones.
Yeah.
And now, even if
Exactly.
I have to microwave, which I don't love doing, but I will do it if I need to because I'd rather eat than not eat at all, I'm doing it in a glass container versus a plastic. Just little
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
that, where it's like, okay, maybe replace like a pre-workout that's got like full of caffeine to like one with just like an energy blend. Like slowly start making these little changes in your life and become lifestyle, like you said, Donovan. Like,
Mm.
if you struggle and you have to have all this food, okay, maybe just make sure you have protein in every diet, like in every meal. Have a meat, have a fruit, have a vegetable. Start there. And then after a couple weeks, you'll gain the confidence of committing to that and you'll
Yeah.
want to do more, right? And I
Exactly.
think that's
Yep.
with goal setting and anything. And
Hmm.
I'm
Yep.
sure, Torva, you could say that for your mindset, right? It's again a big thing where everyone's like, I need to change my thought pattern. It's like, stick to one. If you, let's say, like have body dysmorphia, and every time you look at yourself, you're like, you're a disgusting piece of shit. Well, work on that one. If you say that, then turn around and say 5 nice things about yourself immediately and just start working
Even
on that.
even in that, like in that example, what I would tell someone is start by telling yourself something different that you can actually believe too.
Fair.
So
Good
if
point.
you look at yourself, like because if you go from you're, looking at yourself and saying you're a fat piece of shit in the mirror, you're not going to believe the 5 nice things about yourself that
Yeah,
you're
good point.
being told to tell yourself. But
Yeah.
if you look at yourself and say, you know what, my eyes maybe are okay.
Mhm.
Fine. If that's the best you can do, then that's the best
Yeah.
you can do.
Yeah.
Start there.
Yeah.
Start there.
Yeah.
And like the things I'm gonna go back and
Of
plug
course.
this survivor's mindset program again because again it's free and the tools that I have in there are they're so simplistic. I actually had someone email me back and be like, is this for real? Like, I mean, some of them are so straightforward and easy
Yeah.
that it's like you won't even really believe that they're legitimate, but they are, I promise.
And
Like,
please keep
yeah.
talking about that. Let's maybe kind of like not end but kind of go towards that now. So you guys are here helping. What can we do to find? So Donovan, you have your coaching in the like physical part, and then we've got Torva with the like mental part, and then like together you guys are just like crushing shit.
Yeah, so we're actually doing we're doing joint coaching together, one on one, for survivors to help them with like recurrence prevention. And so we're blending like Donovan's expertise with, nutrition, supplements. We didn't talk about exercise, but that's a huge factor. Strength is a huge building strength is a huge factor for survival. Plus my mindset work, and the emotional healing that needs to happen because of the cancer and fixing is the wrong word, sorry, but changing some of those emotional patterns that we talked about earlier for the type C personalities, like the people pleasing and being, overly responsible and conflict avoidant. And the third piece, right? Because there's three factors. We didn't really talk. We're kind of touching on the lifestyle stuff. Is helping you with some of the lifestyle things that need to change. Getting into nature more, getting some of those toxins out of your lifestyle. Even the people that you're around. In fact, I'm just dominating the conversation. Sorry, I'll let you talk
Please
too,
do.
Donovan. I promise. I actually just opened up a Facebook group because some of these support groups online are so bad for you. Like you go into like, the ovarian cancer support groups or whatever, and it's like people are hogging the space with their toxic dumping, right?
Positivity. Yeah.
They're out there looking for the pity party. And that's I'm not casting shade on them at all, but it's not a positive space.
Mm-mm.
And so I've just created it's called the Thrivers Guild. It's a Facebook group that is specifically for people who want to be in a high vibe space, like for whether they've had cancer, they're coming out of cancer, they're healing, or they're past their cancer journey and they want to stay committed to their own healing and well-being.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a free resource as well. But we're also going to be launching a group program too. And by the time this comes out, there should be some stuff out on our social media about that. So it's the first group program we run. It's going to be a very, very small cohort. So if you're hearing this and you think that you want to work with us, then don't delay.
Yes. And two, I just think too, you guys are there for all people, not even just like cancer survivors too, right? Like, or people with that. I feel like, you both are very, like I said, helpful for me, even just to have that resource and that connection to you guys. But also too, and then like I said, Donovan, you obviously coach, right? So you can help
Yeah.
people in that area as well. Even outside of the whole like cancer diagnosis, you can also help people that just want to heal whatever they're going through.
Oh, absolutely. But in terms of the context of this program,
Mhm.
it's just so many people, they don't know how to navigate natural health supplements and nutrition. And they hear all kinds of crazy stuff from their friends and family, like, oh, you got to take this. This cures cancer. This fights cancer. Because they heard like one thing on TikTok somewhere and they think that's the answer. And boy, oh boy, even though I'm a health coach, people were throwing that shit at me when Kristen was going through cancer. I had some crazy people that were just so misinformed about what's what. One guy he literally brought me a bottle of hydrogen peroxide and says, your wife's got to drink this because cancer cells can't survive in an oxygenated environment. And this hydrogen peroxide, you just got to drink it every day and it'll kill those cancer cells. Like he was so convinced.
That's not all it'll kill.
Yeah, it's not all it'll kill. And my God, people actually put their faith in these singular things
Absolutely.
and strange things with no investigation, no research. And so, I'm here to help people sort out the crazy stuff from the
Can you
real
talk about
stuff.
can you talk
Sorry.
about diet?
And
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
well, in terms of cancer prevention, whether it's you've never had cancer or you're trying to prevent a reoccurrence, the whole diet is important because of your inflammation levels in your body. And so the whole goal with diet is to keep your inflammation as low as possible by switching out the types of fats that you're eating and being aware of what's good and what's bad. And to having a diet that's very rich in antioxidants, of all kinds. There's thousands, hundreds of thousands actually of antioxidants that come from different types of foods that help to fight cancer. And of course having enough protein, which is just for about anything in life. If you don't have enough protein, your body's not resilient to fight just anything that comes its way. And so people are just they just don't have that knowledge at all, and they're trying to fight this beast called cancer. And I'm just here to help narrow it down and say, look, you got to do these things, take these things, eat this way, and it just sort of speed the whole process up for them so that they're not
That's the
trying to search this stuff up on the internet themselves and getting lost in misinformation and
Overwhelmed.
overwhelmed. It is overwhelming. It's very overwhelming.
well,
There's
I was gonna, yeah, so like there's information out there like for people that are trying to prevent recurrence. There's like this blanket advice out there like you have to eat this diet or you have to eat that diet. Can you talk about why that's not appropriate?
to eat like one diet over another.
Right, just as a blanket, like
It should be
you had
individualized.
cancer, you should be, yeah, like you had cancer, all cancer being lumped in together, and you should eat vegan or you should eat keto, and why that's not necessarily correct.
Yeah, things get a little bit lost in there because cancer is such an intelligent disease. It's got a mind of its own, literally, and that mind is a metabolic mind, and it has many ways to survive in your body metabolically. And so sometimes what people will do is they'll go keto, and because there's part of there's a partial truth, and that's cancer cells love sugar. They thrive on sugar, and when you eat anything sugary, the cancer cells get that sugar first, and they fuel themselves. And so people find simplified ways of looking at that and go, well, then if you eat then you're going to kill those cancer cells. And that may be true for some cancers, but there's cancers, actually many cancers, that can change their metabolic pathways. And so it can go from consuming sugar to consuming ketones
Mm.
or fatty acids. So when you try to change your diet, thinking this is the simplified solution, this is the cure all, your cancer may just change and say, okay, great, we're eating fat now. Good, let's do that and keep growing. And so you really have to know what kind of cancer you have. What are the studies out there that show works best against that specific cancer? Because
Mm.
you get people that go the other way and go all vegan or a raw food diet, but then what happens is they lack protein and then their body loses resiliency. And that's another thing is, like, you got to have good muscle mass to fight a cancer. And so people will starve themselves of another macronutrient like protein and go on like a raw food vegan diet, eating greens all the time, which is great because there's aspects, of why can that be healthy? Well, because you're getting the antioxidants, but people just confuse it and they take it to an extreme and then they cut other
Yeah.
things out that are anti-cancer. And so you really got to know what kind of cancer you have. What are the studies on it that show what certain things work against it? Is it a cancer that can thrive if you're actually eating keto or not? Can keto kill it? Maybe it can. Maybe it can't. But don't assume that all cancers will die from a keto diet or all cancers will die from a vegan diet. It may not be the case.
No.
And so you
Yeah.
really have to look at, what's out there, like the deeper knowledge of what's been actually studied to work against your cancer. And maybe there is no answer sometimes.
Maybe
And
you're
and
figuring
yeah,
it out. You're the test
you got to
subject.
figure it out. You got
You
to
got to
use your
figure it out.
intuition a lot of times, sometimes,
Or work with a
you know.
coach that knows what he's doing.
Hey, there you
I
go.
don't claim
And
to know everything though either.
No, I'm not. No,
oh
but
gosh, never.
but you
Certainly I
understand.
don't.
You
And I
like
also and I
you
also
understand
know
how to read the studies.
and I also know that you can take all the supplements in the world and that cancer still might come back and it might even kill you. But what you are doing is you're lowering your chances. You're
Mhm.
improving your chances of surviving the cancer and lowering your chances of a reoccurrence or, dying from it. Or maybe you're able to prolong the time between, the reoccurrence by doing natural things. Like it's not necessarily a cure. It's not a cure actually. It's just improving the odds. That's all you can do.
And I feel too like if you do that by naturally like trying to clean that up because we could all be cleaner, I'm sure all of us can
Yeah.
have some improvements. I feel like your life will also just feel better. Like big conversation that people don't always have too is like, okay, if we worked on our diets, would we have as much mental health issues in the world?
Well, right.
Probably not.
Right?
No.
Yeah.
Right. And so like again, like if that's why I like appreciate too, because I think there's two big pieces to curing a lot of things or getting on the path to or feeling better. It's your mental health and your mindset and your thought process and your what you're eating, because not only is that just the physical part of your body and all of that stuff, it's also the mental part of your body, right? And two, even just not eating food, like hangry is a thing. I'm
Hmm.
it all the time when I'm not hungry
Yeah.
or when I'm not eating, right? So I think there's so many different um ripple effects to having personal responsibility and looking into those things. And I would encourage people to not wait until they have cancer or
Yeah.
illness to start doing that. I think we get in
Mhm.
a really easy habit of everything's convenient, everything's good right now, so nothing's wrong. But you actually, and I'm not trying to fearmonger by any stretch of the length, but stuff can accumulate over time, and we're very good as human beings, especially women, and moms are the best at this and dismissing everything they have because they're a mom or they're busy or they're whatever or they're a woman, and just it's normal. Like my naturopath, she was like, what's pain for your period? And I was like, I don't know, like a 4 or 5, like normal. Brandy, that's not normal. You
That's not
shouldn't be
normal,
feeling
no.
that. That is, there should be zero pain. You should know from getting your period that you're having your period. That is it. And I was like,
Yeah.
huh. And she's like, see how we've normalized that so much, right? And so I think because we've normalized discrediting feelings, we're not connected to our bodies because we're not mentally, spiritually, physically, eating, emotionally connected. So we don't actually know what these signals are. And then we're so busy outside of our world just trying to pay our bills and do all of that. Like all that disconnection, all that irregulation is going to lead to something, right? So
Absolutely.
where can we, again, that's a lot, but where can we stop and say, where could I be better? Is it sleeping? Is it relationships? And good point, Torva, like your lifestyle is a huge part of your success in life. Your body's going to know that, right? And you want to talk about that a little bit of like making sure your lifestyle and people around you, or however you were wanting to go off into that.
One of the things that I had a habit of doing in my 20s and 30s and even into my early 40s was ignoring my own happiness. So I would just kind of be like, well, that's not important. Like, how important is happiness anyway, right? I mean, honestly, I know that sounds stupid, but so then I'm in this chronic state of like low grade depression or, stress, whatnot. So that has a massive impact on your body.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, stress causes inflammation in the body and it makes it much harder for your body to heal. Your immune system can't function as well in that environment. And there's so many studies that link and I'm just talking about happiness, but your happiness, your satisfaction with your relationships, all of that, right, are linked to better outcomes for health and longevity and all of these things. So, you know, we don't necessarily think about setting boundaries or being happy in our job as a factor in our health, but it absolutely is. Studies have documented this to be true. So it is another important factor that when you go into trying to, looking at all the things you can do to prevent recurrence, like you can't just go back to the same life.
Mm.
A lot of people do, and I kind of do this because like, yeah, I see the train coming. Now, some of them are great and they're fine and nothing ever happens to them, but another factor too is like having a strong sense of purpose is linked to increased longevity. So if you were feeling unfulfilled and purposeless and this and
Mhm.
that before, and you come out of cancer and you kind of like, I feel like it's a journey. You're supposed to learn from it, from having the cancer. And if you come out of it and you've learned nothing and you change nothing, then I don't, I think that what happens next is not going to be very good
Mhm.
for you.
Like a
So,
massive flag almost of like, hey,
yeah,
is that fair to say? Like, is that maybe to you, like not to you, but like that was a big red flag. You've now you're dialed right in, even
yeah, of
more than you
course.
ever have been, right? Instead, some
Yeah,
people
of
are just
course.
like, red flag. That could be a green one. I could be colorblind. And you're like, no, that's a red flag.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, like I've known a lot of women who have had cancer, have a history of domestic violence,
Mm, I can see that.
and I see that's a very interesting connection, right? So is it personality? Is it chicken or egg, or is it having the trauma that caused the cancer? Like I haven't really figured that out yet, but
Perfect storm.
you can't go back in, like you wouldn't go back into that situation, right?
Mm-mm.
Hopefully.
Hopefully,
It's a call. The cancer is a call to change.
yeah.
And usually you know what needs to change. And if you don't, then I would encourage you not to just sit there and go, I don't know, and carry on. Like you gotta figure that out. Like that goes back to the personal responsibility. You have to work with someone that can help you figure that out.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And one big one I would like to ask before we wrap up our call at all today is how is the best way to support individuals going through cancer? I know we talked about this the last time and like what not
Mm,
to kind of say, like, oh, my friends had this cancer and they used this.
yeah,
Just going
definitely
through
don't do that.
yeah, and going through it now because I asked you this in our very first episode, and that was obviously like right as everything was super fresh, right? And I just would like to know as you're going through it now, and you've come out on this side, for those that are have family or friends with it. Like I always even feel like I'm always like trying to think like I just don't want to hurt your feelings or say anything that could be triggering. I know that where my heart is in a good place, but I know a lot of other people worry about that too, and just like how's the best way to support you guys without making you feel defeated or there's no hope or is there an answer?
Hmm.
Yeah, I have a few. What I want to say, because I want to hear Donovan's too, because what's important to remember is that no one fights alone. So anybody that's going through cancer, if they're married, their spouse is going through cancer too. And so, I have a little bit of a beef. There's, a couple times when, like well-meaning friends would be like, hey, Donovan, you need to be strong for your wife. And I was like, we take turns being strong for each other. Sometimes I was feeling stronger and sometimes he was feeling stronger, and that's all valid and okay. Like it's shit for everybody involved.
Hmm.
Um, so I would say this too. Time moves really weird when you're going through cancer, from the moment that word is spoken. So don't be afraid to check in with them daily, like because a day is a century in their life. Ask them if you're like I don't really want to bother them. They'll say, hey, is it okay if I check in with you daily? And they'll say like, no, don't do that, or hey, yeah, that's great, thank you. Um, so that's one. Number two, don't just say whatever you need. I'm here for you. I'm here to help you. Give them specifics, please, please. And if you're hearing this, bless you for hearing this. You go be the one to organize the other friends and let them know, hey, this is how we support our friend by
Hmm.
saying, can I make you dinner? Do you want to go out for coffee? Would you like me to go to appointments with you? Do you want me to take the kids from you? Like, do you want me to talk to your parents because they're being assholes? Like, whatever, like offer them specifics.
Yeah.
They are not going, chances are they are not going to be the type of person to say, thanks for offering anything. Can you do my laundry for me?
Yeah.
People,
But
um, So
Especially if
to
you struggle
be
to ask for help, like at that moment that, you're probably not even also thinking of like the things that need to be done.
exactly great. Yeah, exactly. Because they are hyper independent people,
Mhm.
right? So they're not going to ask. And even if you offer, they're probably not going to want to take you up on it. So I used to have a friend when I was a single mom. She would just come over to my house, and anytime she was over there, she would sweep my floor.
Didn't even ask. Just did it.
She didn't even ask. She just was like, she knew where my broom was and she would pick it up and she would just sweep. And I'm valid, like, I was not the cleanest person in the world. So probably she was doing that 'cause she was like, oh my fucking God. Anyway,
Sometimes you
stuff
just
like
need people
that
to sweep your
is
kitchen.
great. Yeah,
Sometimes.
just showing up with a pot of lasagna, like, hey, I brought you dinner. Like, what's the worst I'm gonna say? Like, oh, I just ate. Okay, great, thanks. Now I'm gonna freeze it and I have dinner for tomorrow. Like, seriously, just be tangible with your offers or with your help. That's what I would say.
That's perfect. And Donovan, for yourself, as someone with like to Torva's point, like you have to be strong. It's like you can go through your emotions too. Is there anything that you would suggest for those speaking to spouses that are going through it as
Oh
well?
man, yeah, you may as well have the cancer too. Honestly, it will take a big piece of you. I know I aged. I through this whole process. I feel it in my body. It's heavy. It's really heavy. Um, and it's traumatizing. And things if you get through it, like things will really never be the same again. Yeah, of course, be strong for your spouse, but like the reality of it is people, throughout the whole thing were like telling me that I need to take care of myself. Don't forget to take care of yourself. But these are just words. I couldn't. I couldn't take care of myself. I mean, in all honesty, my diet turned to shit. And yeah, my friends are telling me like I look like I was pale and sick through this whole thing. I didn't see that when I looked in the mirror, but they saw it and they were polite enough, not to say anything then. They told me after the fact when it was all said and done, but like, yeah, it's you know,
Yeah.
I don't think I have advice. You're just gonna have to go through it. It's
That's
just
But
pretty
I
fair. That's fair. But I
hearing
think too is having compassion and understanding. I think even just in what you're saying is just as hard. I think will be validation for a lot of people that go through it. Because correct me if I'm wrong, it's like this weird guilt of like I feel all this like pain and upset, but I'm not the one going through it. And then there's, I'm sure, conversations within your mind being like, because I know I do, if I'm going through stuff, someone's going through something worse. Therefore, your experience is invalid. But that's not true because that's your
Mm,
other part.
yeah,
That's your other half. That's your other person.
yeah,
That's your wife, your mother, whatever it is. It's still you're watching someone go through it. No,
yeah,
you're not going through it, but there's also effects of that too, especially if you don't know and you're being told that she's going to die. Like,
yep,
they're and people are very easy to dismiss that because they're not the ones going through that. That's why I wanted to highlight in this episode what it feels like to be with someone with that. I mean, you've got a fucking powerhouse beside you, so like, you definitely
yeah,
have a trophy that pushed through that. But I can even imagine like that's not easy to go through. It's not easier to watch someone, and I don't want to discredit just because you're not the one going through it your experience as well. Because it
yeah,
is huge, right? And because you're
yeah,
fighting at the same time and you're fighting somebody else while trying to be there for her and be in the rooms and be a parent and all be a coach. Like there's a lot more to it as well, and I think that
yeah,
deserves some honest talk about it. So thank you for sharing that.
yeah, absolutely.
And I'm
I
sorry
I
you
had
guys
a
had to go through this. I still.
I I had a strong trophy next to me too. I mean, I know Donovan is a very sensitive creature, human, and a very loving partner. And I know it was devastating and traumatic. And, whenever I needed him, he was there. He was calm. And, it's one thing to see your friends going through this, but to see your spouse go through this, I can't, I don't know that I could have been the same, for him. I will be if I ever have to be. If you see everything I said about supporting someone with cancer applies to their spouse. If you see someone struggling while their spouse has cancer, don't just tell them to take care of themselves. Like say, hey, what do you need? Do you need a coffee? Do you need a day off? Like, what can I do? How can I help you?
Oh yeah, some of
And
the nicest things that happened was when people actually brought me food. So it was actually some of my clients and all, like they brought me like home cooked food because I wasn't doing any of that for myself. And I was just going to the health food store because they have like pre-made food. So, even it's a health store, but it's not that healthy all the time. And I was always finding a way to the chocolate cake. So it was nice when people would just do that because they knew like I wasn't eating.
yeah,
And That was very helpful because that was the one thing I'm not able to do those things.
Food is a love
Um,
language. It
yeah, yeah.
absolutely
The
is.
only
Tangible.
the only
Never
thing
underestimate the power
the
of
only thing
food.
I managed to do for myself was I still worked out. Like I didn't eat well, but I still worked out. Like there's a one thing because it was a way to escape for a couple
Control.
hours and just
Yeah.
get into a meditative space. I tend to get into that zone when I'm working out, and that was therapeutic. I didn't just like quit on myself for that. It wasn't perfect, like showing up on like how I normally show up to the gym, but I still went
Mhm.
and I did the best I could. So that's the one thing I'd say is like if you're doing fitness, don't give that up because honestly, your body will go down the shitter too. Honestly, then you're gonna have two people now with shit health, one with cancer and one like falling apart in all the other ways, maybe becoming obese or, getting heart disease in the process or something, like,
And not having a stress release too, right? Because
yeah,
as I've noticed from both of you speaking, a lot of what happens is a stress buildup, right? So as you're going through that, if fitness, and maybe fitness isn't, because some people it stresses them out more, whatever it is that releases that stress, that anxiety, that energy within your body, I think you should always try to at least have that one activity. For us, it's
yeah,
the gym, it's movement, right? If I don't go there, I've got 1 hour at least. If my day's crazy, I can at least control the gym. Maybe I won't have the best workout, but I get to
yeah,
decide showing up. I get to decide to move my body and do something positive. And when I leave, I said, I checked something off my list today. So think if you
yeah,
just have that one check mark of what you can do for yourself, whether that's praying or meditating or gratitude journal, like one of those things, I think that's
yeah,
a great takeaway is like still have one piece of normalcy for yourself that expends that energy so it's not building up to your point where you could get sick as well because
yeah,
your immune system's shot, your mental health is shot while she's going through this too. You're
oh
not
yeah,
eating.
yeah,
Every other thing in your life isn't there. The gym at least was something mentally,
hmm,
physically to commit to that you had control over and that you knew you could do, right? So I
yeah,
think that's a good, very great takeaway. And I don't know, you guys are one of my favorite couples because you guys just don't give up and you're honest with each other. You hold each other accountable. And I think you inspire each other all the time. So I think that's really amazing. And I hope that this is a catalyst to a big piece of you guys helping change the story. I mean, we've talked about government stuff. Like next year, I personally want to, how the fuck do we change policies? How do we get in here and change stuff? Like I talk about breast implant illness. How do I get that to the fucking surgeons doing this now? Like, I feel like that's
yeah,
the next point for me for my advocacy. And then you guys are on that next piece too, where you're going to be standing behind these people, making them feel strong. At the same time, I know you're having conversations with news outlets, even though they're like can be trash, and the right people. And I think that's what we just have to keep doing is pedal to the
yeah,
metal now and don't shut the fuck up.
Yeah, excellent, absolutely. Our MLA elect is a doctor, Dr. Anna Kinney.
Interesting. And so, how did your guys' election go? Did your girlie get in at
Yeah,
least? Oh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Conservative MLA.
yeah,
yes. Okay, that's amazing.
yeah.
That's a start. I know it's not what we
It's a
all
start. I
wanted.
don't know what she can actually do since
I don't
it's not a
either,
conservative government, but
More than
but
we had before. More than we
I
had
know
before.
she had a role in kind of just in helping to shape the conservative healthcare platform. So
Amazing.
my hope is that she has a role in even in the shadow cabinet or something. But we've talked to John Rustad too. And so what can they do? Who knows? But yeah, I think the next level is okay. They didn't get in,
Yep.
damn it. But there needs to be some reform, and it's got to go beyond this bullshit 10-year fucking toilet paper of a plan that the NDP put forward 7 years after they were elected.
If they and even if are they elected, because I'm still going to claim voter fraud no matter what. No, I'm
No, I
just
mean
kidding.
their
I know.
previous election.
Yes, but even then,
I'm
I
not
don't know
even
that
gonna
I
touch
believe
that.
they never got
No,
to fight against a conservative. BC has never had a strong conservative party to fight against liberals and NDP since I've been born. So it's like
no,
to me, I know this is what we wanted, but to see the majority of the province blue and showing that more people showed up, more people are understanding as much as it's
hmm,
not the result that we wanted, it is in the right direction. So I feel like people
yeah,
like us have to keep doing this shit. Even if we didn't get it, there's still more voices in there. There's still more British Columbians showing up. And
yeah,
unfortunately, I've been saying this for a couple of years. Some people got to be squeezed a little bit harder and have it on their doorstep to understand how bad it is. It's unfortunate, but it's true. And it's like for me, that step was the vaccine and being mandated to not be able to fly within my own country. That was my catalyst to, right? And so I feel like a lot of people, unfortunately, are going to have to go through some of those situations. to catapult them. You guys obviously with this situation got more political for like, I don't know if you were political before. Can't say that I was following you before, but I know now, like for me, I'm much more invested than I ever have been because we see
Yeah,
that it's affected us, and I'm sure you guys
Yeah,
feel that way as well,
100%.
absolutely.
100%.
I've
right?
never
So
been
we
more
just
outspoken.
I know, I love it. I was like, well, someone turned the loud button on us, so I'm fine with that. And I'm not going to stop, and I, we have all different ways of doing it, right? Like Donovan, you like to come out with like your like hard truths and your funny, like in your face reels, where Torva's coming with her experience and just like, this is what I've been through and you don't have to be this way. And I'm just like running my mouth all the time. And I think if all of us keep coming to the page in all different angles, being super compassionate and understanding, and opening up dialogue and not being so closed boxed, we'll really be able to help move conversations in these situations forward. I just truly believe that.
I think that
Yes.
there's absolute magic in authenticity. In fact, somebody recently told me, and I believe this, I haven't looked into it yet, but that authenticity is the highest vibration,
I
not
feel like
love,
it's got to be.
authenticity. So I think
Yes.
the more of us that are coming at this from our own authentic angles and lenses and voices, the stronger and more potent and powerful we are. And I think that that's exactly why, like, the schools and all the institutions are trying to get us to be carbon copies of each other
Mhm.
because we lose our authenticity and we lose our strength in that way.
Yeah. And then when we can see our own uniqueness and our own authenticity, we don't get offended about other people in theirs. Right.
Mm,
And that's what I
yeah.
feel like when people aren't aligned, they don't understand purpose, maybe with like willingly or not. I don't get mad when I see a woman or man vibing and they're doing their things and they're helping the world. I'm like, fuck yeah, you're doing this and it's you. And I feel that, like I don't, one thing I was like, guys, I have too much anxiety to be fake. Okay. Like I
Yeah.
even tell a little white lie and I'm like, I over exaggerated that. And now they're going to think, like I'm not here for it. So I find leaning in and being as authentic as possible. Maybe not always taste everyone's favorite cup of tea, but I
Yeah.
have lots of good friends and I love y'all and that's all that matters. You find your real people so you don't have to feel like you have to be
Yeah.
any different than how you are, right? So
Absolutely.
you guys are amazing. Just 2 hours went by like
Thank you.
this. If I
Thank
didn't
you
have
are
a
too.
Halloween party to prep, I'd be like, let's keep going. But this has been so amazing, guys. I just want you to both drop your
Thank you.
handles just one more time before we go today, just so that wrap up. Where can we find you, Torva and Donovan, on social media?
I am at Torva Logan, TorvaLogan.
Perfect.
And I'm Coach Donovan James, Donovan. Coach Donovan James on all social media channels.
I appreciate you guys so much. Keep pedal to the metal. Keep going on shows. Every time I see
Awesome.
you guys do somewhere
You
else, I'm
too,
like,
Brandy.
fuck yeah.
Keep it up
Okay.
with opening up this podcast space for people. It's amazing.
I will. I
Yeah.
appreciate you
Awesome,
guys so much.
Brandy.
Thank you. Have a good rest of
Thanks,
your weekend.
Brandy.
And until
You
next
too.
time, guys. Bye.
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 Thank you guys so much for the support. I cannot thank you enough for being here. If you like this episode and you want to hear more, please give me a follow at the Be Real Babe podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, and Pinterest. You can also find me on Facebook at the Be Real Collective. Until next time, guys, bye.